Hello, everybody, and good evening. Welcome to our June 18th, 2020 regular scheduled meeting. This is a virtual board meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Roll call, please, Madam Secretary.
Mary Lane is here. Roxanne McDonald. Present. Michael Mead.
Present.
Adil Moseb.
Here.
Mary Petchlikoff.
Here.
James Thorpe.
Here.
President Barry.
Here, thank you. Next item, please.
Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Dr. Adnan Mogni, principal of McDonald Elementary School, will introduce students who will lead the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good evening, board members and Dr. Maleko. We are from McDonald Elementary School. I am Mrs. Hanson.
I'm Mrs. Hamoud.
I'm Jude, and I'm Samad.
And we are here to say the Pledge of Allegiance, so please put your right hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance
It's to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
Thank you and have a great meeting.
Well done. Next item, please.
Superintendent's update. A moment of silence.
So good evening, everyone. As we've done the last couple of months, I'd like to
It's all yours, Glenn.
Okay. Good evening. Yeah, you're fine. Good evening, everyone, President Barry, trustees, members of the public. So we've done this every month, given the current COVID-19 crisis. We've had individuals who have passed away as a result of the virus. One is, and it happened several weeks ago, but it was before the last board meeting, Senator Morris Hood. So I want to specifically mention him. And I would just like to take a moment of silence for all those, not only locally, but across the country and internationally, for that matter, who have lost their life as a result of COVID-19 or lost a family member. A moment of silence, please. Thank you.
Next item, please.
Agenda items. A, retirements.
So we have retirements that are coming in this time of year. You will likely see them increase, usually in June, although this year, because of the COVID-19 situation, we don't know how that will necessarily impact exactly. But we do want to congratulate all those who are retiring and thank them for their years of service. So we have Robin Crawford with 21 years of service, April Cronin with 31 years of service, Margaret Dudek with over 19 years of service, Tracy Lahudi, 25 years of service, Renee Schuett, 32 years of service, Suzanne Wancha, 22 years of service, Deborah Washington, 32 years of service, Joanne Zekar, over 42 years of service. Again, thank you to our retirees and congratulations. Let's give them a round of applause virtually. So we. Oh.
Go ahead, Dr. Maleko.
Oh, that's okay. Okay, so curriculum, we have that on the agenda right now for an action item. And so I've asked Dr. Chokol to come in, Executive Director, Ms. Eunice, Lori Principal, and Ms. Maynard to come and speak to the curriculum. And this is an action item. We've been deliberating on it. It's gone through all of the process through our curriculum council. in a normal year, I think we would not even be maybe having these extra steps per se of extra verification of the need, but because of the COVID situation, we've gone through additional process. One of the things I did is after it went through to the curriculum council.
That's an excellent point. Excellent point. Absolutely. And that's, you hit it. That is just so critical.
Trustee McDonald, do you have a follow-up question?
No, it was answered. Thank you.
Okay, then we'll go to Trustee Thorpe. You had a question?
Yes, I think Mrs. Eunice alluded to it already. What grade level does this go through? Does it go through 5th or does it go through 8th?
This is up to 5th. And we are working on piloting a program for middle school currently now for language arts because it is in K through 8th.
Thank you.
Any other
Did we
questions?
want to hear from the
Moser?
math teacher too?
Trustee Moser, you had a question?
Yes, my question was regarding parent participation. What was the feedback from the parents regarding this program? Did they feel it was different than the students, or did you have a parent who had a child that was piloting and another child that was not in the program that could give you that feedback?
Well, we piloted it in 2 different grade levels. So I never had any, and my parents are very verbose. So if there was anything concerning or that they were concerned about, I would definitely have heard of it. But, I'm going to be honest with you. I can't really comment much to that because I didn't hear any negativity from the parents at all about this. So we piloted it in our first grade. That was the grade that we decided to pilot in our building. And parents were very excited. They would come in. We have a day where parents actually come in during a parent meeting and they could walk into the classrooms and observe what's happening, and they take notes and they could ask questions based on those observations. And everything they had to say was just wonderful. They loved the visit. They really appreciated it. They learned a lot. They saw how this program was implemented. So it was only positive feedback, but I didn't delve deeply into specifically asking them how they felt about the benchmark.
As part of the piloting process, for all of the resources, according to the district piloting procedures, we do have the opportunity for what we call a materials preview time for both the Dearborn staff, teachers and administrators, and also for the parents. So the materials preview was attended by about 160 elementary teachers, and there was a survey that teachers filled out after the end of their session. Not all the teachers filled out the survey, but about 75 to 80% of the survey responses were extremely favorable. There were a couple of concerns and questions about why it is we're considering a resource at this particular time. And I think that those questions were addressed by Superintendent Maleko early on. The idea that the COVID-19 budget can pay for a good portion of these since they are digital resources. The other part of the materials preview was an opportunity for parents to preview. And we heard nothing but positive comments about their ability to access every part of the curriculum online, to look at all of the student readers, to look at all of the lessons that were available. And as Mrs. Eunice said, the games that were available and the work that students could do at home were all there for them to look at. So this is quite a benefit, I think, from a home perspective, as well as certainly our teachers' ability to spend time teaching and not on curriculum development, as Trustee Lane pointed out. So I think we wanted to move over to the math program if there are no further questions. And our department chair, an expert math teacher from Etzel Ford High School, who also led the initiative to pilot the programs that were part of the high school math recommendation, Angela Maynor. I'm going to turn that over to her and ask her to speak to the secondary, the high school math. Angie?
Thank you. Good evening, President Berry, Board Trustees, and Dr. Maleko. Thank you for having me. As Dr. Chokol said, I was part of the whole vetting 2-year process, and I was fortunate enough to pilot the 2 choices that we narrowed it down to. We piloted one in the fall and then Envision AGA in the spring, and AGA actually one was overwhelmingly chosen by the committee. And I'm pretty sure it's because of the resources that are available. So I just wanted to give you like a list of the resources that we have. There's a physical book, there's an online PDF version of the book, and then there's an online interactive textbook. There's a consumable workbook that can be used as notes and or practice pages if we were going to use it in the classroom if we go back and when we go back. There's videos that are already created that can be linked to specific topics or examples. There's an online practice that includes both help buttons and hints for the students. This is pretty powerful. There's an adaptive practice that if it's assigned to the students, it takes them back to possible problems like that they're having in the previous material, but it can also challenge students to go further. So it works both ways and it adapts to each student. So it's pretty powerful. Gives them videos and gives them different kinds of problems. There's a readiness assessment before every topic that can help teachers determine previous skills that the class could be struggling with. Each topic also has a quick formative check at the end that can help teachers determine if students are ready to move on. There's online quizzes and tests that are pre-made or the teachers can build them. So there's a question bank that they can choose from. There's printable versions of the test quizzes and practices as well. There's mixed reviews that often throughout the book that spiral back to make sure that students' learning is both continuous and permanent. And then also there's what they call 3-act math lessons that help students do a conceptualization of the entire big picture of what the unit is looking at. And then each unit also has an optional STEM project, a STEM project that can be used to pull all the math together that's used in the real world. So in my opinion, all these resources will both be helpful in school or if we continue in our remote learning or if we have some sort of hybrid version of the two. Obviously, the online resources are priceless in a remote learning atmosphere, but also having an actual physical book in students' hands is a great resource to help students and their guardians navigate through every lesson. We hear that so often, why don't they have a book? For many years, we've been teaching without a book, and we hear over and over, why don't they have a book? We need a book. So I think the physical book is going to be a huge part of it as well, whether we're at home or at school. And that's it. Does anyone have any questions?
Trustee McDonald?
Yeah, when I was reading about the curriculum, it said that it had opportunities for project-based learning.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just, and I'm assuming, was that for both or was that for the math primarily?
I know the math does. That's the STEM projects that are at the beginning of every unit. Yes.
Right.
I don't know about the language arts.
Jill, do you know? Oh, can't hear you.
There are multiple add-ons to the benchmark program and a lot of cross-curricular work with both science and social studies. And so the committees have looked at aligning all of the standards for science and social studies to the language arts so that students could participate in some of the projects that are part of the science as well as the social studies aligned with the language arts.
Okay, thank you.
I think I'd also like to give our teachers just a huge compliment. As Ms. Maynor discussed and as Ms. Eunice mentioned, our teachers have been creating their own lessons, spending hours and hours and weeks creating their own lessons because they did not have a curriculum resource to provide them with a roadmap. So again, it was just where we were as a district, but they have worked very hard without a sound structural support like this curriculum resource for a very long time. So my compliments to them, and I know that the recommendations of the piloting teachers, as well as all of the teachers on the elementary language arts and the high school math teachers, shows that the teachers that use the resource truly are committed to it and the benefits during this time of remote instruction. So the benefit, even for high school, of having a book in the hand and not just that online resource is something that the teachers have realized that the students really need. So thank you very much.
Trustee Petrikos has a question.
Yeah, if we move forward with these two programs, and I forget how many, was it 6 years that we were buying into them? Are we going to, at the end of each school year, survey our teachers again and find out whether whether this is really working for the majority now, not just the pilot schools that handled it, that everybody has bought into it, and as we move forward, so that we can and maybe even as Trustee Lane or no Trustee Mosip suggested, get some parent feedback after a certain period of time as well.
Yeah, that's certainly something that we can do. The digital portion of what the publishers call the online training is quite extensive, so that teachers can access these supports, virtually 24/7. And we know that, like anything else new, that it might take a little time, but the benefits in terms of having lessons right there that are pre-recorded that can be administered to students immediately is a benefit. We feel like at the end of the first year, getting teacher feedback, Trustee Petzikoff, that's a great suggestion, would be, truly a benefit. As you know, that purchase price does extend out over the full 6 years, and there are no additional costs for either program. It includes all of the consumable materials, the teacher materials, and all of the software licenses.
Okay. And do we know how much the CARE program is going to, is it 50%, 70%, 20%?
We have a table down there. Mr. Wall is probably a better.
Okay, I'll wait until I can actually pull it from the agenda then, and
I want to
ask
say
that
at least
question.
75 to 80% of the program, if I'm not mistaken. I think about 75 to 80% of the language arts, and maybe more, like 50, 60% of the high school math can be charged off to the
CARE program.
To the COVID-19 money.
Okay. Well, we'll let Mr. Wall get to that at some point.
75%, he said.
Okay, well, that's a sizable chunk of change for not being taken from the general fund for this. Okay, thank you.
Has a question?
I think the question that I had in mind has been answered, so thank you.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Dr. Choko, thank you very much. Thank you to you and your team.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Yes, we'll go to the next item, please, Madam Secretary.
Non-agenda items, COVID-19 update. Again, I would note there is a comment that'll be coming in the comments section, which asks a question about this and the reopening.
Okay, thank you, Secretary Lane. President Berry, I may just decide to combine A and B. B is reopening committee because they kind of integrate together. And so we continue to respond. We have our crisis team, as everyone is aware. We've been watching, all the data in the community. We know that we're starting to open up here in Michigan, so we're monitoring it closely. We're also continue with our food distribution. We're continuing with the continuity of learning plan, which ends this week. And so I do want to say, congratulations to all of our students who are advancing grades and/or those which we're going to talk about later, our graduates. And I want to thank our great staff and parents, because it has been a struggle and everyone really has stepped up and worked together. And so by the end of this Thursday, we tried to make this kind of a lighter week of finishing assignments, but it is here. We're near the finish line as far as the 1920 year. But we will continue to support our students, whether that be through summer school or other ways. And as you're aware, we are planning for next year. So as I go into the reopening committee, it is connected. And so a lot of things that keep coming up and questions for me, and we had a Facebook chatting event, our first virtual chatting. I'm doing chatting events with staff and parents virtually now. We had our successful session last Thursday. And that's the big question from parents is, what is going to happen? And the reality is we really don't know. Having said that, we're planning for multiple possibilities, and that's just the truth. Our committee that I appointed, and this was prior to knowing about the governor's committee, and I know Trustee Lane and Trustee Thorpe are serving on the reopening committee for Dearborn. We have the co-chairs, Jane Mazza, Mesa Mali Bazzi, David Higgins. There are over 70 individuals from the community and from the staff that are sitting on this. And my understanding is there's even more that are going to sit through the different subcommittees. So one of the directions that I've given the committee co-chairs and the committee and I came in the first session, is to say, look, we don't know exactly what's going to happen. And the reality is, because the governor and the legislature will have to decide what school will look like, we, myself as superintendent, and even as the Board of Education, we don't have the legal authority to determine the number of days and things. That's a state decision. Once the state comes down with that decision, then we as the board and the superintendent and our locals will have to decide how to implement it per the law. So even if we hear of local districts coming up with this plan or that plan, they really don't know yet. They're planning for possibilities, but it's nothing definite until the state gives us direction. And so I'm very proud that we do have our committee. We're looking at all the reports and we are ahead. Now, some states have started sooner, but they also end their school year down south in May, early May, and then they start up in early August. So they're on a little bit of a different time schedule, and we're seeing some of the plans. So we're still waiting for direction from the state. And at the same token, we're not sitting back, because we are going to come up with multiple possibilities. Possibilities such as, do we think students could be back in school fully next year? Or could it be partial days where students may go some days during the week and then some days online? Or if the virus really, were to increase the number of those who were infected, would it slow down? We'd have to close again. We've talked about things like flexibility. So, for example, is it possible that we could open schools for a couple of months and then all of a sudden we have some cases and we have to close an area? These are all things that are being discussed on my committee with the state, by the way. So we're discussing all these things to come up with a plan. There's also the possibility that we could be partially in school and then all of a sudden we get a vaccine and then guess what? We're able to return. And so there's a lot of things. And so we have to plan for flexibility. And I know that's not what people want to hear because they want to know. But the reality is right now, and I've heard Dr. Fauci say, the virus dictates what's going to happen. The science does. I'm sitting on that committee for Dr. Rice with Dr. Carnell. I'm one of 3 sections. And one of the things that Dr. Rice, the state superintendent, made it clear is that this will be a medical and science decision first and an educational decision second. Of course, education is important, but right now the health of the state and the health of the country is number one. And so that's where this decision is going to start from the. So interim, we are coming up with possible plans. How is transportation going to look? How is athletics? All these questions that are out there are things that our committee is going to address. So I don't have any specific answers, other than what I can say is we are being very proactive with this. With the committee, we're gathering the input of the committee. And then once we do get direction from the state, we will be able to individualize it for the needs that Dearborn Public Schools has. I also think we're doing a service to the rest of the state because through my ability to work through the state committee, I will be also using examples and information that I'm getting from a local committee to bring it to the state committee. I've already had several meetings. And our timeline, hopefully to get recommendations to Dr. Rice, which we'll take to the governor, will be by the end of June, if not early July. So, but again, we were also told that committee could be called together throughout the summer periodically and or beyond, depending on the crisis at hand. So I did take a little bit of time to explain this, but I can tell you this is a question that continues to come up. So understand that we're being proactive, we're planning for multiple possibilities, and we're going to put the health and safety of the community as the number one, and of course, our students. And we appreciate our great staff that's involved, and I appreciate all the individuals who are involved on the state committee. There's multiple, and then, of course, our Dearborn committee.
Dr. Maleko, why don't you just continue with your non-agenda items, please?
Okay, sure, I'll do that. All right, I'm going to go down to commitment to diversity, and I just have a statement that I put out last week. I put out a statement to the community. It really has been a difficult week in the United States as we continue to address the COVID-19 virus, as I just mentioned, and with the tragedy in Minneapolis and the rioting in some cities. Thankfully, thousands of people peacefully protested in efforts to focus our attention on important social issues and seek out solutions to address inequalities, inequities, and destructive beliefs. Over the years, our community has also experienced the hateful actions of those driven by prejudice and racism. We must continue to stand up to these destructive attitudes that promote hate. We must also affirm our commitment to support all people of color. Our students and staff have worked very hard for many years to create a school district that respects all people and continually seeks to gain a better understanding of different cultures, religions, and lifestyles. This vitally important work must and will continue in our schools and in our community. And again, I put out a statement on this last week, so thank you. And I'll continue with my commentary then at the request of President Berry.
Please.
So I do want to, oh, go ahead, unless there's any comments. Okay. Under D, I just want to mention that we will have on the board agenda for renewal the MHSAA athletic membership. Again, that'll be another thing. We don't know the direction of what will happen with athletics in the fall. You know, we know some athletic programs allow for social distance, some may not. So we're going to be following state and governor regulations there. Under E, I am going to ask Eric to play a video. We did, you know, we're going to be talking about graduation in later in the agenda as a discussion item, but we also had to put together a video that highlights some of the material distribution that occurred at the high schools, along with recognizing our students. And I know our principals and our teachers and our staff have been, we feel for our graduates to 2020, and so we do want to recognize all of them. So I'll let Eric play that video now. Thank you. So again, congratulations to our graduates and more to come with that. I'll continue with my commentary. Moving down to F, board meeting at ASC. So I've talked to President Berry and I've talked to our attorney. And so for the next board meeting, we're planning to have it live at ASC. We have to follow certain regulations. We're also going to have a virtual option as well. Because if we do allow open to the public, we have to follow all the regulations with temperature testing and other things that are required. Anybody who's there would have to legally wear the mask, and we could move it to the side when we comment, but we are going to plan for that option. We will have to limit if public wants to come in physically, and that's one of the reasons why we have to have the virtual option, because we'll have to limit the number. We'll have to social distance with the 6 feet. And even the Board of Education, those that are in there, and myself would have to social distance. So our team has been working on the plan, but that's tentatively what we're planning to do. So I wanted the public to be aware of that. And June is the only month where we do have 2 board meetings due to the budget. Every other month we have one meeting a month, but June we always do it because we have to pass the budget per state law. Move. Oh,
Dr. Mead, you have a question? You're muted, Dr. Mead.
Is it also an option for board members to attend virtually?
Yes, it is. Yeah, not mandatory to
Thank you.
physically there.
Dr. Maleko, I don't think there are any windows that open in the board meeting room, are there?
I do not believe so. There may be a couple at the top, but I'd have to check with operations. But there's very few, if any.
Any other questions? Please continue, Dr. Maleko.
Okay. Just quickly, my role with the State Superintendent Association, I've been working hard with that. It also gives us extra insight into what's going on across the state. And so I just want to assure, Dearborn schools and also the state, the county, and the state. I represent the state actually in my role there, and working hard for the students of Dearborn. It gives us an advantage, and I appreciate the support of the board when I was elected to that board last year. So I'll keep moving along. I want to mention this. This is 2 years now, I believe. It's just a little over 2 years. My esteemed colleague, President Cavalluna, has been with the district. And I want to thank the Board of Education for hiring President Cavalluna. I want to thank him for the great partnership and for his leadership. It's been great working with him, and understand when I say that he and we speak on a regular basis. We text on a regular basis. We're in communication. When there's an issue, I can tell you right now, it's how can I help you? How can I help you? But it's not about us as individuals. It's about helping the students at the college and the students at the P12. As you know, we continue to expand with the Collegiate Academy, all the programs under Mr. Ferlella, and all of President Cavalluna's work. So I just felt I appreciate him and his team. And I got to tell you, it's been outstanding, the collaborative, when we get into a room, not just the two of us, but when our teams get together, then it's like, how do we solve these problems and these issues? And we're both dealing with these COVID situation. And it's been intensive for both of us. And so therefore, we're also able to support each other through those intensive days that are very, long at times, even when they are virtual. So I just want to shout out to President Cavalluna and thank him for the great partnership. And thank you to the board for our great partnership between superintendent, president, and Board of Education. Appreciate your leadership and the recognition of the importance of how we work together with the P12 and the college. We're like no other place because of that relationship. So I want to thank the leadership of the board. And then the next thing I do.
Dr. Maleko, 1 second, Doctor.
Oh, sure.
Trustee Lane, you have a comment or a question?
Oh, I would just like to say, and I think that I can anticipate Dr. Mead and Trustee Petchikoff agreeing with me, maybe President Berry as well. I don't think I've ever seen such integration between the college and the district. And I'm really happy to see that. Through many years, we maintained both boards with the hope that there would be better seamless transition from our schools into our college. And I'm really, I don't think it's ever been this good. So I'm very happy for it. Thank you to President Cavalluna and to Dr. Maleko.
I agree with Mary.
As do I.
I totally agree with Trustee Lane's comments.
Yeah, it's very heartwarming to see the effort and support that these two gentlemen have given to each other and to the students and staff across the board. And we are the only P14 college in the state, in the nation at this point, I believe. And I think we're an example that should be mimicked, not dismissed. So I'm happy that we are all getting to work together in this fashion.
I think we're all happy about that because it makes our job a lot easier too. So I'm thankful.
I'm glad that they have each other to lean on because dealing with the 7 of us isn't always easy.
Oh, it's not that bad. You guys are pretty good.
Dr. Maleko, do you want to continue?
Yes, thank you so much, President Berry. And thank you for those comments as well and that recognition. We are passionate about what we're doing. We'll continue. Okay, so the budget and public comments. I want to mention that today we had 2 separate forms for public comment. And the reason we did that is because the We did the first one with our normal process, which we have to do virtually on the Google, which there'll be public comment. But the second one is for the budget, and it was posted on the same location. And the reason is because it's a budget hearing. I believe Mr. Wall even posted in the paper, and this happens every year at this meeting when he would come up during the discussion item. And then what will happen is after the discussion item on the budget, he would announce that anybody could make a public comment. So it kind of extends the public comment. So the first public comment closes by, I believe it's 7:10, 7:15. This one must stay open until after Mr. Wall finishes with his presentation with the discussion item at the end of the, so I just wanted to clarify that for everyone and for the public as to why we needed to do that. And again, we're very transparent, as you're aware. We've had, the finance committees taped online, and then we put all the public hearing notifications in the paper. The last thing I want to comment on under other is just that I know there's some comments as I'm seeing coming in that they're going to comment later about the music. I just want to comment that right now we've given preliminary staffing to all the buildings, but the way it works in middle school, and I was a middle school principal, is that they're projecting staffing and they got to go based on course requests from students. I can say there's no definitive decisions yet whatsoever, and we've made that clear to the principals, especially right now, that staffing is going to take a while. So it is possible that, principals are having conversations with staff to start planning for possibilities, but there's been no definitive decisions. And we, of course, really value the music program. I think you know that I've always valued it. I always go to the, sad that we couldn't have the event at the Performing Arts and the leadership of Lisa Meyer. So we definitely value the arts. Right now, everything is just tentative because of the COVID situation. Secondly, sometimes if, we have to have enough students that enroll in classes to run courses. I believe that the orchestra strings, from what I heard from Dr. Chokol, I think would be fine, I believe, but there's still to look at, again, these are preliminary. We've told the principals, just like the budget, most likely, worst case, best case, we've said the same thing to them. I said it at the meeting last week. You need to plan for multiple possibilities. I also made it very clear that when the staffing was sent to the buildings, this is tentative, pending all the budget, which is going to go later this year because of the crisis and because of what's going on at the state level. So I just want to mention for the public out there that these are just preliminary conversations about staffing. And, you're going to hear these conversations occur. And you know how some, rumors happen and different things. I can tell you there's been no definitive final decisions until we look at all the data, we look at the budget numbers, and we see what the course requests are. So anything that may have happened or may have been discussed, is preliminary right now. And I'm doing the same thing with other reductions, which we're going to talk about in the budget later, as I'm having conversations with ADSA and union heads and others to start planning. Because at some point we have to have the conversations so that we are ready to move forward when a final decision is made. So I just wanted to make that comment in advance of some of the public commentary, and I'm finished. I appreciate it, President Berry.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maleko. Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Recognition and acknowledgements, commendations.
Thank you very much, trustees. This is the time of year where we have lots of commendations. There could be almost every student, every teacher for all that they've been doing. But these are just a few that have come across our desk here in communications, and we want to share them and make them official commendations here at the board meeting. We'll start off with commendations to the 31 elementary teachers for their work to pilot 2 English language arts programs, which led to the recommendation to adopt benchmark ELA resources. Also, commendations to the 26 secondary teachers who helped pilot 2 secondary math programs, leading to the recommendations to adopt the Envision AGA math program. In both cases, the teachers spent a year learning the new curriculum resources and collaborating with other teachers and the pilot team to recommend a resource that will best support Dearborn students. Teachers spent hundreds of hours studying and implementing one of the 2 programs. So commendations to all of them who have been part of that, and I know we just heard quite a bit about that. Moving on to high school, the Exchange Club of Dearborn is proudly announcing its annual Academic Excellence Award for the valedictorians at our 3 traditional high schools. Each valedictorian will receive a $1,500 scholarship. Traditionally, they would be here at the board meeting, and unfortunately, we're not able to have them here virtually with us. So this is why we are reading the Exchange Club scholarships here at the commendations part of the meeting. So the valedictorians include Ahmed Al-Shamin from Etzel Ford and Cindy Hackham from Dearborn High. Fortson co-valedictorians are Mahdi Hassan Abdullah and Ibrahim Nasser Qasim, and they will split the scholarship. In addition to the scholarship, each student will receive a special graduation stole to wear during commencement, and we'll talk more about that later on as well. And the Exchange Club at Dearborn has existed for nearly 95 years. Throughout these years, the men and women of Exchange have raised funds for many local community programs and projects. We have many local organizations that provide scholarships to our students, and we try to recognize them as much as we can and as best we can during different events such as our board meetings and other celebrations that typically take place this time of year. Moving on, commendations to the 169 student athletes from Dearborn High and the 146 from Fortson who were named KLAA Scholar Athletes for the 2019-20 school year. Students must achieve a 3.25 or higher cumulative GPA and earn a varsity letter in KLAA-sponsored sports during the school year to be eligible for this recognition. And not to leave out our awesome friends at Etzel Ford High School, commendations to the 97 Etzel Ford High School athletes who were named Scholar Athletes for the Down River League. As you know, our high schools are in 2 different leagues. Commendations to the student journalist at Dearborn High on their efforts to publish the final edition of the Pioneer Press for the 2019-20 school year. The students were able to work virtually to research, write, edit, and publish the final senior edition. Special thanks to teacher and Pioneer Press faculty advisor Michael Schmidt for continuing to work with his journalism students and oversee the successful production during the current continuation of learning plan. It's always tough to put together a monthly paper to meet all the deadlines and hit all the deadlines. To do it virtually, as these students did, is quite impressive. So very deserving of this commendation. Commendation and special thanks to Etzel Ford parent, Ms. Angela Parenhag, for her generous donation of homemade, comfortable, and fashionable face masks. The masks have been made available to Etzel Ford staff who may need them when entering the building. And commendations to Dearborn High sophomore Amina Ferris, who is named to the MHSAA's Student Advisory Council as a representative of the class of 2022. Congratulations to all of our students who will be moving on and to another grade for next year and those graduating. And we want to thank and congratulate all of them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Masnad. Next item, please.
Acknowledgement of donations.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Just a couple quick donations here. A donation of $460 has been offered to the Dearborn Public Schools by an anonymous donor to the Dearborn Education Foundation to be used to provide lunch to the food service workers and who have continued to provide meals to students and their families. Almost 65,000 meals a week and going strong. A donation of $5,000 has been offered to Saliner Intermediate by the E.W. Edwin C. Levy Company to be used for a drinking fountain filters at that school. And that is all the donations.
Thank you very much. Next item, please.
Approval of minutes of the following Dearborn Board of Education meetings. Regular P12 meeting, May 11th, 2020. Board report 19-129. Regular policy committee meeting, May 12th, 2020. Board report 19-130. Finance committee meeting, June 1st, 2020. Board report 19-131. And the recommended action is to make any necessary correction and move approval of these minutes.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion that was moved by Trustee McDonald and supported by Trustee Mead. Are there any corrections, questions, or discussion? Trustee Lane?
On the regular meeting minutes at page 14, I would just like to have added that I noted that the class, we were discussing graduation again at the part 2 of the meeting at about 9 minutes and 45 seconds in. I noted that the class of 2020 will be remembered for its sacrifice for the health of the greater good. So I would like to have that mentioned. That class has lost a lot, but their sacrifice has been for others, and they'll always be remembered for that.
Great, thank you. Are there any others? Okay, hearing none. Madam Secretary, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Lane, yes. McDonald? Yes. Mead?
Yes.
Mossad?
Yes.
Petchlokoff?
Yes.
Thorpe?
Yes.
Barry?
Yes. The motion passes. Please attach a unanimous roll call vote. Thank you. Next item, please.
Tonight, there are no special reports, so we're now at citizen participation. We do have a list of blue cards. So those citizens who are wishing to address the board on the agenda and non-agenda items for action did complete a blue card by 6:10, I believe it was. And these will be read by the board secretary. The board may not be in a position to respond to non-agenda items or agenda items, so speaker should not anticipate a response at this time. I don't believe any of them mentioned the names of students or school district employees. And obviously, as normal, the board president has the right to limit times. I will read them now if you concur, President Barry.
Please, do so.
Okay, the first person is.
Can I make a comment? Sorry, President Barry. I received a message that number 29 is request to pull line 29.
Line 29, I'm sorry.
On the sheet.
I put it on your sheet, Mary.
Okay, I'm going to have to go and get the newest, greatest.
Oh,
David.
okay.
Okay. I will refresh my list here. So 29, I will not read then. Okay.
That was the request.
Okay. All right. So.
Trustee Lane?
Yes.
It's going to be 29 on the spreadsheet, but if you're looking at the Google Doc, it's comment 22.
There are 22 of these? Oh, boy.
There's actually more. There's actually a total of 25 comments total. There were 4 comments that came in that had no name or address, so they'll be in the spreadsheet, but they will not be in the other document.
Okay, I am not reticent to read the comments or the names. I'm just, you will all have to exercise your greatest patience with me because I don't have my mouse in, so I have to scroll down carefully. First comment is from Mrs. Aziza Jarouche of Dearborn. She's apparently representing herself. I'm a mom of an elementary student. I go to, going to start my scrolling. I go to school and work as well. While my son is in school, I wanted to know if school is going to open up with the regular days and hours like before, Monday through Friday, 8:35 to 3:35. I have been hearing different comments about half of the students going on 2 days and the other half on the other 2 days, and I was wondering if that is a possibility. I just wanted to ask that you keep as working and studying us, that should be working and studying parents in mind, because that won't work out for us. Daycare is not affordable by the majority of parents. Thank you, and I'm sure you will make the best decision for us all. Comment number 2 is from Mrs. Lisa Crum, representing the Edsel Ford class of 2020 parent group. Here is her comment. Let's talk about a normal graduation ceremony, whether it be limited guests off-site or a couple of ceremonies for each school. Not the drive-by, hang out the window type other cities and states are doing it. Please take into consideration what the students have given up, lost out on already. please don't cut the conversation in half. Everyone I speak with on behalf of the school wants this for their student. I understand the city has multiple high schools. Thank you for the class of 2020 parent rep. Next comment is from Ms. Jane Maza. She is from Dearborn and representing the Dearborn Federation of Teachers. Good evening, board members and Dr. Maleko. As president of the Dearborn Federation of Teachers, speaking in opposition to the purchase of Benchmark Advanced 2021 ELA curriculum and the Envision AGA math curriculum. The cost of these two products is over $2.3 million. Currently, DPS is in a budget deficit caused by the COVID-19 closure effects on the state of Michigan revenues. This is a purchase that can be placed on hold until the district has recovered from the deficit. Due to this deficit, the DPS is looking into reducing staffing for the 2021 school year. The cost of the not purchasing this new curriculum would protect approximately 30 teaching positions. This is not the time to reduce the teaching staff. Our students and families need the support and teaching skills of our dedicated staff. Okay. Next comment is from Mr. Gerald Krasuski, who comments thusly. This year, there's an unusual amount of teachers leaving the Dearborn school system and going to other districts, even accepting lower wages. Does it concern any board members that Dearborn is losing award-winning experienced teachers? Dearborn has invested in these teachers who are now going to other districts. Does anyone investigate what is happening in the schools to cause this mass exodus? Isn't it better for our children to be educated by experienced teachers? At a school board meeting on February 12, 2019, it was brought up that the teachers in Dearborn teach in fear, quotations. Why hasn't anything been done since then? This has been happening too long before the coronavirus pandemic. I have personally spoken to several teachers in the district, and the stories they have told me of administrative harassment are shocking. Next comment from Janelle Powers of Dearborn, representing, it looks like the name of a student. I wish to comment on the proposed canceling of the music program at O.L. Smith Middle School. I believe this is the following of her comment, although it's displaying awkwardly for me. Instrumental music has been an integral part of our family's life. I think this is the next person, Miss Eva Harrison's comment. I cannot see anything else from Ms. Powers. So the next one is from Eva Harrison. Instrumental music has been, representing O.L. Smith Band Orchestra Cuts. And is from Dearborn. Instrumental music has been an integral part of our family's life. Our son has idolized his sister playing in the EFHS marching band. He will be going into 6th grade at O.L. Smith Middle School this fall, and we were just told that the instrumental teacher position has been cut. This is devastating not only to our son, but to the program at the high school level as well. Without students who feed up to the high school program, it will not survive. Music education is too important to let it collapse, especially during this time when we all need to come together. Next comment is from Mr. Michael Mackey. Wish the music programs at STEM and Smith schools to continue. Music is, I think he meant vital. It says vile. Mr. Brian Bacon of Clinton Township, representing 40 years of teaching experience and a longer residency in Southeast Michigan, 20 years experience as a mathematics department head. There is a clear link between access to the arts, music, physical education, and student 4, 8, and 10-year outcomes. What are you doing to ensure the safety and success of these programs? Special education programs have allowed a significant deaf community to flourish in my hometown. What are you doing to ensure that these essential programs remain funded? Next comment from Amal M. Berry of Dearborn, representing parents. I understand O.L. Smith's musical program will be cut for the next school year. I can't begin to tell you how disturbing this action is by DPS. The music program has enriched the lives of my children and many others. How can we cut funds on this enrichment program that has developed strength, talent, leadership, and overall well-being for our kids? During a time of unrest, pandemics, and racial divide, the last thing we need to do is cut a program that celebrates the mind and soul of children in our district. This is simply unacceptable and must be reconsidered. Next comment from Mr. Douglas Rouleau of Dearborn, representing, and I believe this is a student's name, so I won't read it. Comment is, it has recently been brought to my attention that the band and orchestra program will be cut for the 2021 school year at O.L. Smith. This is a great concern to me, as I firmly believe that the arts are a very important part of a well-rounded education. I know that there are tough decisions that are going to be made for the upcoming school year, but this program needs to be left intact. Thank you for consideration regarding this matter. And he signs his name, and he is an O.L. Smith and Duval Elementary parent. Next comment from Mrs. Rebecca Valentine of Dearborn, representing O.L. Smith. Comment is, we are opposed to O.L. Smith cutting their band and orchestra. I start with a question. Why is that when thinking about budget cuts, music and art come to mind first? Why do you believe these are expendable? When you take away band and orchestra, you are taking away an opportunity for our kids to be able to find what they are, food, I think that should be good at or love. It's not a class or after school activity to them. It's so much more. It is a community that they have found and can express their creativity side, find friendships, help them navigate through finding themselves. They will never get the opportunity to find their full potential and experience what music can bring to them. As parents, you want your children to have every opportunity out there. Your son or daughter could be that professional violinist or drummer of a band. Where do you think the people who bring us the music started? They started in band and orchestra. Music isn't just a class, it is therapy. We all have a song we hear that reminds us of a time in our life. Psychologists use music as therapy for patients. The importance of music is crucial to children's development. Do not cut these programs. Okay. I see a comment here, but I do not see the name. It may be someone who left a comment without a name. And I don't see phone number or address, but shall I read the comment, President Berry?
Name, I would probably say, I would go ahead and say no. Just go.
There is no name here.
And just go ahead to the next one then.
Okay, all right.
Please.
Trying to do that. This is quite a long comment. Okay, the next one, I'm sorry if I did miss that, but I don't see the name in there. David maybe can correct me while I'm reading this if there was a name to that. The next one is from Mrs. Eileen Morton of Dearborn. Her comment is, O.L. Smith is already lacking in extracurricular activities for the children who do not play sports, compared even to the middle schools in our own district. This is telling students who do not participate in athletics that they are not important. Creative thinkers are going to be the next innovators of this country, and you are basically saying that they will not be coming from Smith. You are basically, you are cutting off my daughter's musical education, one that she enjoys, and she will never be able to catch up to her peers once she is in high school. Also, assuming that this is budgetary, what are you planning to do with the students who had band as an elective? adding to the teacher-student ratio to other, I'm sorry, somebody just moved the screen, to other elective classes that they have no interest in? Or are you planning to hire another elective teacher, which then of course defeats the budget argument? It is very difficult to reinstate a music program into a school that it has been cut from the budget, as shown throughout the country. I am so disappointed with this decision. I am now very much considering changing districts. I guess it should be money first, students second. Next comment is from Carol Reynoso of Dearborn, who says, I recently learned that O.L. Smith is cutting their music program for next year. As a parent of 3 children who have greatly benefited from the music program in the district, I hope the Board of Education will take action to ensure that music and the arts are maintained in our schools for some students. This is the area where they shine and where they have the most positive experiences during their school day. We have experienced excellence in music education in Dearborn from elementary to high school years, and I hope this continues for all students. Next comment from Madeline Stevens of Dearborn, representing all Dearborn schools. With such large budget cuts and not knowing what the fall will bring, why are there not more summer fundraisers to help raise money for the schools? Each school board PTA could conduct their own. For example, Whitmore Bulls and O.L. Smith could hold a few summertime fundraisers to help keep their band program alive and other programs at Whitmore. No elective should be cut. It is no fault of a child that we must make budget cuts. That's do our best to get creative and do fundraisers over the summer to help keep programs like band and other electives. Okay, next comment is from Sarah Harrison of Dearborn, representing O.L. Smith Band and Orchestra Program. Hello, I'm a graduate of Maples Elementary, O.L. Smith, and Dearborn High School. I was involved in the band program at all of these buildings heavily, and that experience helped shape my life. I am currently a music educator in Plymouth Canton Community Schools. Without my experience at these buildings, I would never have gone on to receive 2 music degrees and teach the thousands of children over my 14 years in education. During my time at O.L. Smith, I was able to try out many different instruments, find a group of friends who had the same interests, learn responsibility, become a leader, and discover I had talent many others did not possess. It gave me enough confidence to go to Dearborn High School, not knowing anyone, as all of my friends went to Edsel. I met my husband in the band program at Dearborn High School. These programs have value for students. They give them a home and help them find themselves. My nephew and countless others will not be able to find that home next year as you take it away. My niece is thriving at Edsel Ford High School because she was able to be in O.L. Smith band program. In a time of uncertainty during a pandemic, taking away a place of comfort and somewhere for students to call home just because you think it should be at the forefront, it does not fit your budget, is reckless. Social and emotional learning should be at the forefront of your thinking, and band, orchestra, and choir classes provide that for students. I currently have a 2-year-old, and this makes me question whether or not I want to send my children to Dearborn Schools, a school district I value in, to Dearborn Public Schools, a school district value in the future. Next comment. Mrs. Sylvia Gibson of Dearborn, cutting the music program. She's representing. Her comment is this: just received an email that the music program will be cut. I think this is a horrible idea. Music helps students grow. They learn so much from it. My daughter has been in band since 5th grade. I have watched her grow into a more confident person and become a better student. She has an amazing teacher. Mr. Wolf, is one a heck of a teacher. By you stopping all fundraising to the program, a lot of students are going to miss out on so much. They are a family, not just a class. You may want to rethink this one. Next comment, Mrs. Shayna Moritz from Dearborn, representing, looks like the name of her child. Comment is, this is terrible to cut music. Incoming sixth graders have only just begun an interest in music and playing instruments. They just chose their electives for crying out loud. And now you're going to take it away from them? Haven't our children lost enough this past school year? Comment from Mrs. Erica Putkowski of Dearborn. I'm sorry if I've mispronounced that, representing O.L. Smith. I'm concerned about music being cut from O.L. Smith. It would be a disservice to the kids to remove the music program. Music has been proven to improve learning for students. These students would also be at a disadvantage when it's time for high school music if they lose out on 3 years. Not everyone can afford private lessons. Another comment below is from Mrs. Victoria Gonzalez of Dearborn. I was informed today that the principal at O.L. Smith is going to cut the music program next year. My daughter is currently in band and has participated since 5th grade. She plans on continuing band throughout high school. This will be devastating to her and many other students if this program gets cut. She already suffers from severe anxiety, and middle school has been a bit rough for her. She has found a place with these band and orchestra students. Her brother graduated this year from Edsel Ford and started in 5th grade with Dearborn Music Program. We cannot let this program get cut. The arts are so important for so many students. Please keep the music orchestra going at O.L. Smith. Thank you. Next comment, Mrs. Melissa Lage from Dearborn, representing her students' names are listed. Please don't cut band orchestra programs from the middle school level. Kids need these programs to learn music and socialize. The band gives them a sense of pride and helps them to develop helps it mentally and prepares them for life events by learning how to work as a whole and performing in front of a crowd. My daughter has been performing under Mr. Wolf for 4 years, 5 to 8, and it's taught her so much. She is so proud of herself every time they perform march or just simply learn a new song. My son, his name, just finished 5th grade band and was really looking forward to expanding his learning next year in 6th. There are other places that could be cut, but fine arts isn't one of them. Please consider asking for donations from parents before making a final decision. Thanks for your time. Ms. Robin Macklid of Dearborn, representing O.L. Smith and Duval, says, I have learned that there are again plans to cut band and orchestra at O.L. Smith. This is devastating news. Music programs are so very important. Smith band and orchestra students make up over 50% of the band and orchestra at Edsel. Cutting these classes will ensure that the band and orchestra at Edsel will also soon be decimated and killed. My understanding is that band and orchestra will still continue to be offered at Bryant. Why is my daughter not offered the same opportunity? If we are giving up on orchestra, we are giving up on all high achieving kids that it is important to. Offering music at some schools in the district and not others is unfair. Will border exceptions be granted for all those children that want the same access? Some kids at Smith are taking 2 gym classes a day. What is being done to drive interest in music programs at the elementary and middle school level? This is devastating news to the parents and children of the entire Edsel Ford feeder system. We are not being given the same access and opportunity to learn music that other schools in the district are. Next comment. I do not see a name on this one. David, do you see a name? It's a very long one here. It looks like it's the last one. I'm sorry, well, okay, this is line 29, and this is the card that's being pulled. Finally, Ms. Michelle Kerr of Dearborn says, please consider keeping the O.L. Smith music program. In the nation's current climate, our community must not deprive children of interactive learning, leadership, and cognitive skills to save dollars.
Trustee Lane?
Yes.
Line 17, Mr. Tom Lackey.
Yes.
I believe we missed that one.
Okay, I will try to, sorry, as I say, it's really hard to scroll without my mouse. I'm mouse impaired. I'm moving up there, everyone. Thank you for your patience. 17, okay, I see the, okay.
Yeah, it is a longer longer comment.
This might be the one that I couldn't find the name for. Band and orchestra at O.L. Smith being eliminated. I just found out literally 10 minutes ago from the band and orchestra teacher that the program might be eliminated next year. I realize that there might not be a whole lot of people in the band and orchestra. However, there, in my opinion, is enough. I have done nothing but promote Dearborn schools through this COVID crisis, along with supporting teachers and administration 100% in disciplinary decisions in the past years. This decision is not only disheartening to myself, but to my kids who have put so much time into this program for the past 2 years. What does this decision tell our kids? Work hard, advance in an art, but we as a district can take it all away. That is absolutely terrible message to send. For all of the positive things that have gone on in the district these past years, this will truly be one I won't be able to stomach and will significantly affect my support for the district and its leaders as a whole going forward. There are other classes being offered in the district that my eyes should be on the chopping block, that in my eyes should be on the chopping block first, such as keyboarding. Keyboarding, really? And woodworking? Keyboarding, woodworking over band orchestra? Come on. Unfortunately, in order to have these unique classes, our kids and all others interested in these programs will need to attend a private school or move to another school district who has the funds and intelligence to keep music programs alive. The foundation of any city is strongly connected to its schools and what is offered by them. This is a huge setback for both the district and the city as more and more are leaving for other destinations. I pay a very large amount in school tax each year compared to other larger cities, and as each year goes by, I'm less for my money, this being an excellent example. I sincerely hope that the board and other leaders reconsider the possible decision and far-reaching effects.
Was it the last one?
No, I'm trying to find
I'm sorry.
it's jump. I'm sorry, this is an Excel sheet and it jumps a bit.
That's fine. That's fine.
David, maybe you can see, I cannot get the last line. It's not showing on my screen. It wants to jump down to 18.
Yeah, let me.
I can see it, Mary. It says, consider the possible decision and the far-reaching effects it will have on parents wanting to move into the city or others deciding it's time to move on.
Thank you for the assistance.
Thank you. First of all, Trustee Lane, nothing to be sorry about. Thank you very much. We appreciate
it. Good job.
Yeah, well done.
That was a lot.
Yeah. Are there any comments on any of the items before we move forward? Anyone? Dr. Maleko?
Just make a comment that Ms. Farage and the middle school principals will be talking about staffing. And again, just a reminder that this is part of the course request system. And, we're dealing with budget reductions, but there's been no official decisions on any specific staffing. They're preliminary, and we always want to run the music programs, but it's also based on student interest in course requests. So Ms. Farage will be getting me a report, and Dr. Choke will be working on it too. Obviously, we value the music programs and the arts, as we've mentioned. And so just wanted to mention that our students have done great things with the arts and music. And so I'll be looking at that a little further as well.
Before we move on, I'll make a statement on, I can honestly say that all of us, all of my colleagues, including myself, we value the arts, we value the music, we value the athletics. Yes, we always want well-rounded students. So yes, I am looking forward to those reports. To the parents that spoke, we're thankful that yes, you send your kids to our district, and yes, you support our district financially. I know sometimes tough decisions have to be made, but we look forward, as a board, we look forward to more information, and we'll go from there. If there's nothing else, we'll go to the next item, please, Madam Secretary.
The next item.
President Barry, sorry. I can answer this in the request for information part, but I would like to know from Dr. Mileko if this decision or these decisions were to move forward, are they from a budget perspective, or are they from a lack of interest in the program or lack of numbers? So would like that to be included in the report as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
Action items, special consideration of an action item. Are there any agenda items on this agenda which board members or the superintendent wish to discuss and vote on separately? If there are, we will exclude these from the motion below.
Before we go on, I just want to make sure that we all know that there was a supplement added later today in the afternoon. That would be number 19. That would be the resolution, the federal COVID funding resolution. Are there any items anybody want pulled? Trustee Moser?
I'd like to pull item number 17 to have.
17. Okay.
I believe it is, yes.
Anyone else? Trustee Lane?
I would just like to make a comment about number 9.
Number 9, okay.
I have a question about number 9, but don't want it pulled.
Okay. All right, I think that's it. Please continue, Madam Secretary.
That action items numbered 1 through 19 be approved as recommended in this agenda, with the exception of number 17.
So moved.
Support.
So we have a motion moved by Dr. Mead, supported by Trustee Moseb. Let's go back to number 9. I know there's a few questions. Trustee McDonald, what is your question?
Well, number 9, just to reiterate, it is about the disposal of waste products. And I had asked a question and I had gotten some information, just a little background. We have this contract. It was for 1 year. We could extend it for 3 years. We are, over the last 2 years, it has been increased by 5% per year. And now they're asking for an additional $25,000 this year. For the remainder of the school year, due to additional waste from food distribution sites. But my concern is that I would think that the cost would go down because although we have more food distribution, or we have the food distribution sites, we have several buildings that are closed. The rest of our buildings are closed. I did get some answer to my question. But I'm also just concerned. Part of it was that with the new food service that we're providing for our students, that it also increases the amount of waste, which is concerning to me because I'm just curious, are students throwing out more food? Because I'm under the impression that they're enjoying the food more, which to me would be that there should be less waste. So those are my questions.
So I can.
Dr. Malika, yes, please.
So I know that it has to do with some of the student choice, and I believe Mark Andrews is on here, so I'll ask him to click in to specifically comment. But it has to do with the fact that more students are eating lunch and breakfast. So it's not just since the pandemic. My understanding is it's since, the beginning of the year. But Mark, if you could.
Good evening, everybody. I do have some more information. I could answer that for you. So it's actually a good reason for the extra waste. And I can tell you from in the beginning of the school year when I was still in transportation, at 3 of our middle schools, we supply a lot of the food, if not the food, a lot of the supplies for our elementary schools. And when SFE came in and provided the new menus with the additional choices, I can tell you that the amount of items that we moved, it more than doubled. So a lot of the waste, it's not coming because the students don't like the food. They actually do like the food, so they're ordered from. But I'd have to defer to Mr. Murphy and Josh in food service. But from my understanding, more students are buying food, which is creating more of the waste. The waste is actually coming from just, with more choices, you're going to have more cans and more things like that we have to get rid of.
So packaging has a lot to do with
Packaging, correct. Yes.
Trustee Lane.
Yeah, I would just like to have Dr. Maleko, Mr. Andrews, and everyone consider how we can work on waste reduction. This is a problem not only with the district, of course, this will apply to the college as well. We see a direct tie right here between cost and our waste. We're used to just throwing things in the garbage and then we think it goes away and we don't have to deal with it. But any way that we can reduce waste is going to be really important to us, not only right now, but in the future. So I don't know how to do that, but I know there are brilliant minds out there. So I would implore people to think on the subject.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can work with Mr. Norwood from the city of Dearborn. He can partner up with us and try to brainstorm as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Trustee Lane.
What was it, Trustee McDonald?
I just said I agree with Trustee Lane.
Oh,
We
okay,
have to
thank you.
watch our waste, and there's a lot of savings to be done. Plus, it's better for the environment.
Okay, are there any other questions? Let's put the question to a vote. Madam Secretary, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Layton, yes. McDonald?
Yes.
Mead?
Yes.
Zip?
Yes.
Chilikoff?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
Barry?
Yes. So motion passes. Please attach a unanimous roll call vote for motion. And Madam Secretary, we'll go to number 17 now.
Would you like a summary first?
Please. Oh, please.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Summary of agenda action items. Number 1 was approval of warrants. Number 2, approval of contract to Cognia. Number 3, approval of contract to Benchmark Learning. Number 4, approval of contract to Savas. Number 5, approval of contract to Delta Network Services, LLC. Number 6, approval of contract to Presidio Holdings, Inc. Number 7, approval of contract to Navigate 360. Number 8, approval of contract to AARO Companies. Number 9, approval of contract increase to Detroit Disposal. 10, approval of contract to Superior Ground Cover. 11 through 13, approval of non-instructional and instructional personnel items for P12 with a supplement as noted. Number 14, approval of financial statement. 15, approval of 2021 Board of Education meeting schedule per board report 19-137. Number 16, approval of cooperative agreement with Wayne Westland Schools per board report 19-138. Number 18, approval of donations. Number 19, federal COVID funding resolution.
Thank you.
Now back to 17, the motion is. This is an extension of exempt administrators contract. The motion is move that the contract for the exempt administrators be recommended up to 2 years, extended up to 2 years per superintendent's recommendation in alignment with the exempt P12 administrative salary schedule expiring on June 30th, 2022.
We have to move it. So moved.
Support.
So we have a motion moved by trustee Petrikov and supported by trustee McDonald. At this point, we'll go into discussion. Trustee Moseb, do you have questions or would?
Yes, please. So I already asked Dr. Mileko prior to this meeting on this question and asked him if this auto renew would include step increases. And I'd like to get just the answer on record from Dr. Mileko.
Yes, it will if you're entitled to step within the P12 exempt schedule. If they're at the top step, then there obviously would be no step increase. So it would depend on the individual. And this is something that comes to the board every year. You'll probably get the ones from the exempt secretaries coming soon, and all the other exempt classification employees as well.
And as we're anticipating budget shortfall, are we considering obviously the shared sacrifice from the administrators as well? Has this been discussed specifically regarding this contract, or we could perhaps have it renegotiated before we go into this contract?
Well, and these are not the ADSA, these are just the exempt, cabinet level. So they're really come down to individual contracts with standard language. I can tell you that right away, we've been having negotiations and discussions with all the groups, but all the groups do have contracts in place. So we've been pretty open about this, both even in the finance committee meeting where we discussed because contracts are in place with all the groups, it would be voluntarily up to the union groups. And I've put that out there and I put it in my memo this weekend that went to the staff.
And can I just caution Trustee Mosip that we don't start negotiations on, because negotiations are confidential and we don't want to start having these conversations get too deep into specifics.
Yeah. So I'll keep it as generic as possible.
Please.
Because what I just said is actually I put it out in the memo too that went to the district, but we've it's up to the groups, and we have to reduce one way or another. The P12 administrators have already agreed on the taking certain reductions, which I'm not going to get into specifics, but I did indicate that in the email. In alignment with other groups, we felt like it would be a group process that needed to be handled. So they have agreed to those things. So I won't get into specific contract things, but they did recognize that, I can tell you right away, and they were right aligned with others, and they're willing to sacrifice as necessary as well.
So is that in their individual contracts to say that they're willing to give up some of their salaries, or at least the step increases if we give
well, not step. I'm not going to get into specifics, but not step increases. It was in the email what I sent you.
Well, what I'm understanding his question is if we needed to, in order to balance the budget, lean on everybody to kind of like let's see, how do I keep this clean? Like shared sacrifices, everybody. We've done this before. Would this group be part of that? I think I know the answer, but Dr. Mileko?
Absolutely. This would be the first group. And this language that you're approving tonight wouldn't limit that. It just gives me the authority to settle the contracts and negotiate and have recommendations. So it doesn't take away anything that we all would be doing, myself included, working voluntarily with you all. So it won't limit any of that ability. All you do is you give me the authority to settle those, individual contracts for up to 2 years per policy. The board has to approve that. And so you give me the authority to do that. And so if that does come within it, the shared sacrifice, and that's part of the decision we make, that can be part of it.
So what would be renewed then on June 30th though? Isn't that the annual contract though with each individual member?
Yeah, so what happens is there's a different there's a certain number are under contract for another year, and then a certain number, not everyone's on the same cycle because of when they were hired. So some contracts will be renewed July 1, and some will be, some are already in place until July 1 of 2021. And I can get that list to you of whose contracts are up. And so we'll have to, settle that language. We don't necessarily have to sign everything right away as of June 30th. You just have to give me the authority to extend it, and then we can sign this. We can even go into the summer as far as the signing. Sometimes we've signed them. I mean, even with the teachers' contracts, individuals, which we do sign after, it's not like they necessarily sign them exactly the date. It's just once the overall parameters are accepted with the collective bargaining agreement, same like this, then they would continue their employment with Dearborn Public Schools, pending the condition.
Before we go to Trustee Lane, I just want to make sure the motion does say that this extended up to 2 years. I know we keep saying that we can extend in the contracts 1 year. Is there a reason for that or?
It's always been 2 years. It's been like this every year. We give them up to 2 years for the exempt administrators. It gives them sense of security.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure on the same page because earlier you mentioned renewal of 1 year. Trustee Lane, you had a question.
Sorry.
I just want to make sure that we put it out there.
Sure. Yeah, it's all of them get 2-year contracts, but in a case where someone just gets hired new, when you do this, you give me the authority to do 1 year. And, like any group, if someone was on an improvement plan, then I could do a 1 year if necessary.
So the way I understand this is an executive decision by Dr. Maleko, where it can go up to 2 years. Trustee Lane?
Yeah, I think that what I'm reading, and I appreciate Trustee Moses calling the question. I have the utmost appreciation for the cabinet administrators. These are people who are highly skilled and highly professional. I think what is not being addressed directly is the concern is that all of the sacrifice, budgetary and otherwise, will not be on one group. And Dr. Maleko, I'm very confident that would not be your style that's not your modus operandi. We just want to make sure that it's not the lowest paid people who have to, I want to make sure it's not always the lowest paid people who sacrifice. It's everyone together in shared sacrifice. I think that's what Trustee Moses means, but I appreciate him bringing the question.
Trustee Lane, I agree with you there. Yes, we want to make sure that we're fair to everybody, and I think Dr. Moses, hopefully one day, Trustee Moses. Thank you for bringing this up. It just seems like this is the first contract that's come up since COVID-19. So yeah, we don't want anybody to feel like they're being questioned or what have you. Yes, we value all of our employees. It just happened to be this is the first contract. Do you set the tone, or do I think throughout the history of the board work with the administration and with all of our staff representation, we've been very, very fair, and I think they've been very fair with us too. So just FYI. Anybody else? Trustee Moses, do you have another question or?
No, absolutely. I agree with Trustee Lane that I do appreciate each one of them for their hard work, and they're very skilled professionals, as she said. I just want to make sure that as we're moving to put ourselves in a contractual agreement and we're signing off on this, we don't go back and say, oh, well, we need you to lend a hand here and share the sacrifice as well, when we're asking the other unions and bargaining units also to give concessions. So I just want to make sure that this is in this whatever contract that we're renewing, that hey, as we're moving through approving the budget, that you're willing also to share the sacrifice. And as she said, we would like it to be across the board, and it has to be equitable for everybody. We don't want to hurt, especially the people who are in the bottom list. For the folks who are on the top of the list, they may take a higher hit than the ones who are in the lower bottom area. And it is tough times, and I do understand that, and it is very unfortunate, but those are the circumstances that we have to go by, and the rules and of the game that we have to play by. So I appreciate that, but I just want to make sure that those are, as we're signing off on this, that this is mentioned somewhere in the clause that, hey, we'll have to come back.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you for initiating the discussion. Dr. Malika, I know you have you've been waiting for a comment.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I mean, when I met with our administrators, I'll just say they stepped up right away, and they said they would take in alignment with ever, less of an increase, reductions, however you want to frame it, right away. There was no hesitation. So they're going to be aligned, and that's going to be indicated in the contract. And again, we can't. I mean, there's one way or another, you have to reduce your salary and compensation. So even with cabinet, I mean, you're looking at reduction of position / compensation. And so again, because of our contracts with all the groups, we can't, the reductions are going to be up, we have to negotiate that individually. But the other way is that you have to reduce positions. I mean, it's just the math. It's the reality of where you're at. But right away, didn't hesitate in our meetings. And I've put that in some of our notes too, that, they're willing to do aligned with the same percentages, whatever the other groups are doing. So, and we've tried to, we've had many conversation with the other groups. So we'll see where that goes.
I can confidently say this, that none of us doubt that, Dr. Malika. Thank you very much. If there's no other comments or questions, Trustee Lane, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Lane, yes. McDonald?
Yes.
Mead?
Yes.
Mosa?
Yes.
Petchlokoff?
Yes.
Thorpe?
Yes.
President Barry?
Yes, thank you. The motion passes. Please attach a unanimous roll call vote to the motion. And now we can go to the next item, please.
Now the main theme, discussion item, graduation ceremonies.
So I'm going to let David come on here. He's going to start, and I think we have our high school principals that are going to join as well. And we know this is an important topic. And just to mention, we've been working hard for really 2.5 months talking. I've been talking to trustees, talking to parents, surveying students. I think we've had about 8 different student group meetings, and I know the principals have been working hard. The graduation time, it's my favorite time of the year, and I'm missing it. Normal, but I'll tell you, the work with the local principals and their teams is tremendous, and they put in a lot of work every year, and every year they hope that weather holds on. That's the big thing. And this year we're in a different situation. And again, it is a lot of planning, and I've met with them several times, and I know they put in a lot, and they're passionate just as we all are. I can say this is my graduation in a normal year is my favorite time of the year. However, even though we're on a normal year, I'm still going to make it my favorite time, because when we have those ceremonies that will occur, or those events, however we want to say, it will still be my favorite time as we recognize our great students. So I'm going to turn it over to David.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maleko, and thank you, board trustees, as well. First off, I just want to say that, it's been really my pleasure to be able to work with all of our high school principals on developing these plans. They really, them and their staff, they are really the ones that put these ceremonies together each and every year and do a phenomenal job at doing that. During this whole COVID-19 thing, we've all kind of pitched in different ways to kind of help things work. And since we were looking at everything that we were doing has been so different in these last few months, this was just my way of trying to pitch in and help them and support them and kind of be the voice of what's going on here. So by no means do I want anybody to think that these ideas were coming from just Dr. Maleko or just the board or just the principals. These ideas really have come from all different people. All of us really have put these together. And again, I just want to thank all the high school principals and their staff for working on these projects. And they really, they always say the devil is in the detail, right? Well, they're the ones who have to put together that detail and do all that logistical work and put this all together. So I would just, again, thank them. You know, all of us, we really, from the board to the superintendent to the principals, teachers, parents, staff, students, we all want a traditional graduation. We all want that. That's what we look forward to, as Dr. Maleko just said. But, you know, we are dealing with a worldwide pandemic. And students at all levels, from kindergarten graduation all the way up to college graduation, are missing out on some very significant times in their lives. And we understand that. And we want to make sure that we are celebrating these events. It may look a little different, but the intent is still the same. And we want to honor these students and honor their accomplishments in just a different way. You know, events have been canceled and plans have changed, but we are developing creative solutions to do just that, to honor these students. And I guess kind of the key word that has been in everything that we've been doing in these past couple of months has been flexibility. Flexibility in our scheduling, flexibility in the way we approach things. We've seen it in our classrooms with our teachers who they're like Gumby. They're so flexible. So that's an old reference for you younger folks out there. Anyway, as we are seeing a loosening of restrictions throughout the state, there are a couple of things that we still want to keep in mind. And that is, in our part of the state, what still is a fact, what we still know today, is that outside gatherings are still limited to 100 people. So if you think about 100 people, that's, you know, if you were to do a student and 2 parents, you know, that's about 33 students at a time that you could assemble. We have graduating classes that are as big as, you know, 670 students over at Fortson. So to try to put together an outside traditional graduation ceremony, we're always going to, you know, maybe in the back of our mind think, well, maybe, possibly, but I think realistically, it's probably important to look at some alternative methods and alternative means of doing this. And that's what we're here to share tonight. And the elements of these events really came from our discussions with the students and the principals and the Board of Education members. You were part of those meetings. We had several online meetings leading up to this to solicit those ideas, get that input. And then we did a survey, and there were about 800 people who responded to those surveys, most of them students, some parents. And what we really wanted to capture in those surveys are, what are those elements of graduation that is most important to you that we want to be able to preserve in these personalized graduation ceremonies that are going to take place at each high school. There's going to have to be a little bit of flexibility because the numbers are different and the logistics are different and the layouts are different. So I think each high school will look a little different as far as it may be inside or it may be outside. But I think the overall look is going to be the same. So what we are looking at are some personalized graduation ceremonies. I'm going to say that a lot because that is what we want to, that's what we really are calling these, because that's really what they are. We're really personalizing this event so that every student can feel special and every student can feel honored. Students were very clear in saying that, you know, they want to walk in their cap and gown across the stage. And so every ceremony will have that element. The student will be able to walk with 2 parents, 2 guests that they select to bring with them. They'll be able to walk across a stage area, a platform, a stage area, a designated area where they will be congratulated by their principal, by board members, by administration, the superintendent. Staff members from the school will hopefully take part and are invited to take part in this as well. So for example, at Etzel Ford, a tradition is that the students get clapped out as they leave. That tradition is going to remain at Etzel Ford. Another tradition that we see at the high schools is a photo of the student holding that diploma. That tradition, that element remains as well. So we want to keep all of that alive. We want to keep all of that going. We're looking at dates in July, July 13, 14, 15, and 16. Etzel would be first, Dearborn High, then Fortson, and then a ceremony for the magnet students as well. We are still working with Henry Ford College to develop a graduation plan for the early college programs that are there and here. Director Fadlela is working with the college and working out those details for those plans. But our high school personalized graduation ceremony will involve students arriving. They will get out of their car. They will be able to walk through that area where they will be honored. They will get back in their car, and then they will leave. This will all happen in kind of an ongoing flow so that there will never be a chance for people to stop and congregate and get in those big crowds. Schools will work out the logistics as far as getting students to arrive at specific times. We don't want all 450 students at Dearborn High to show up at the same time. So schools will coordinate so students will arrive in blocks. So, you know, my last name's Mustin, and I always fell in the middle of everything in school. So I wouldn't arrive at the beginning and I wouldn't arrive at the end. I'd fall somewhere in the middle. And we'd hope to do the same with all of our students, to space that out so there's that continuous flow of students into the area and then back out. That's what we're looking. That's kind of a overview in a nutshell of what we're looking. I know our high school principals are here with us tonight, and I thank them for being here. They're the ones, like I said, who are the experts at doing this. They know their schools, they know their communities, they know the logistics of their buildings, and they can answer any specific questions that you may have. I'm just trying to provide a nice overview of what we feel is going to be a personalized graduation ceremony for every student, so that each one of them can feel honored and each one of them can have that moment that we all look forward to when we graduate high school. I am done.
Trustee McDonald, go ahead and speak.
Yeah.
Trustee Berry's mic isn't working.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify because when David said that they would drive up and the student would get out and go through the steps, I just want to make sure that people are aware that the student and the parents would both get out.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Thank you, Trustee McDonald, for clarifying that. That is correct. The student and two guests could get out. Yes.
Anybody have any other questions? Trustee Petrikov?
I thought that, Governor, so I want to make sure that everybody is clear on the numbers that are allowed outside right now. And I'm assuming for the next foreseeable future for Southeastern Michigan, I'm assuming it's only 100, because I know I heard something when she was on Wednesday updating her phases. She said something about 500. Was that for the areas further north for outdoor events? Okay.
I talked to, I can answer, I spoke to Tim Courier. We had a meeting on Friday, and yeah, right now in our area, it's 100, unless there's any change that is made in the future, which it could happen. But you know, they're going to be monitoring the numbers, but in our area, it's maximum 100 currently.
Can we explain then to, because I know, and I read almost all of the comments, and the students are extremely disappointed. They really were holding off with this desire to have their traditional experience. And we saw that we had a comment from a representative from Etzel for the students in our citizen participation thing, same thing. And you hear the same kind of request, just hold off a little bit more, hold off a little bit more. And every time we see a change from the phases, that gives them encouragement that something's going to happen. So we need to be very clear about why we think we kind of have a drop dead date of when we want, and how long it takes to prepare even for something like this, which is not what they would prefer. But even with this, it's going to take a couple of weeks, bare minimum, to throw this together. So can we kind of make sure everybody understands why we're moving the way we're moving with this, and not waiting until August or waiting until, because that's what they're really hoping for.
So I could comment, and then I could take it to the high school principals. I mean, the issue is going to be we don't know what's going to happen. So the more we wait, and it may happen, or it could go the other way. I mean, the reality is that it's going to, as we open up, we could get closed down more, and then it actually limits our ability. What if the 100 even goes the other way? I don't know which way it's going to go. It's going to depend on the science. So there's going to be a point where we're just going to have to do something so we recognize our students. And there is a tremendous amount of planning, even in these kind of events. I mean, David's been out there. The principals have been meeting. We've had several meetings. There's logistics. There's the weather. There's a lot of coordination. There's a lot of time involved. And again, because we want it to go run very well for the students. And so, under the parameters and under the rules, we're aware of what they are. I've talked to our attorney about them. I know what we need to do. But at the same token, if it changes, I'll be talking to him again. And I think we also put in our the messages that we put out, the tentative dates, everything is subject to change. The reality is you could hold off, but if you do, you're taking the risk. And then secondly, you're planning, the planning is huge. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Casebolt, and then I'll let Mr. Martin and Ms. Al-Qadri, if that's okay, President Barry.
Please, yes.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us. I definitely agree with Dr. Malenko's comments. I always start to look ahead a month out for graduation. It's just kind of an internal clock, a thing that I do, and I start to monitor it because it's the one factor we can't control. When I look ahead to our date for July 13th, they're forecast for 89 degrees with a real feel of 95 degrees. On a football field, you're looking at probably 105 degrees, and that's for a lengthy period of time. So I think it's very wise for us to look at all of the factors and the plans that we put together. Like Dave said, my goal, our goal from the get-go has been to deliver an individualized personal graduation experience for every student, every graduate that comes that day. We heard the terms drive-in, and I said that's appropriate for cap and gown. That's appropriate for dropping off books and Chromebooks and things like that, but it's not appropriate for graduation. We will honor our graduates, and we will give them that personal, individualized experience they deserve. And yes, clap them out at Etzel and maintain the other traditions at the other schools. I'll let them speak now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Casebolt, and thank you, everybody, for having me. To echo some of what Scott was talking about, for our end, it's really being able to celebrate with the class. It's fun for us and bittersweet for us as well. So how can we include components that the students want, wearing the cap and gown, celebrating with their family, walking across the stage, getting their diploma cover or diplomas, sorry, and having that closure on their senior year that was cut short. They've lost a lot of things, prom, senior honors night, and senior party. So some of our focus will be how can we best salvage an experience for them that they will remember for a lifetime. And we're at Dearborn High preparing to have the ability to do it outside and inside. The last couple of years, as many of you know, we've been making a call at Dearborn High before because of the rain. So going to be kind of weather dependent, but we feel like we'll be able to provide students a memorable event for them and their families as best we can. So looking forward to that opportunity. Certainly the personalized thing is the big thing. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to make sure everybody understands that
Principal-
we're not trying to push this off as to just get it over and done with. That a lot of considerations have been going into this, and that we do care that they get the best shot we can give them at this, and it's unfortunately not going to be the picture perfect one that they had hoped for originally, and that's unfortunate. Thank you.
Principal Carter is with us, I believe. If you're on there
Yeah,
with the
she's-
phone, then you're muted. If you can hear us, yeah.
Yeah, that is her with the phone.
If you're trying to engage, your phone is muted. While she's trying to figure that out, I know we had a couple board members that served on that committee. Did you want to comment, Trustee Thorpe or Trustee Lane?
One thing that I'd mention that we brought up to the principals was, since we're not going to be able to do the ceremony that the students really want, we can also try to find ways once we get into the next school year to still acknowledge the students at different events. If they were part of any of the groups, even if they weren't a part of the groups and they're able to attend the events, perhaps there could be some recognition then when they have a chance for a group to recognize them.
Okay. Mr. Mussonin?
I did want to mention, and I think I forgot to mention, that the event will also be streamed live so that other family members can watch what's going on. And then in addition to that, the communications department will also be videotaping the speeches from the valedictorians, from the principal, from the board members, from the superintendent. We'll do all that in advance. We'll videotape that day, obviously, and then edit that all together so that the actual event that occurs at the school may last for, several hours. We'll put together an event that is a little bit shorter that will then, we'll be able to play on our cable channel, and we'll put it streaming on our YouTube channel as well. So students and parents will also have something when it's all said and done. They will also have something that they can look back on and help remember what a great event and what a joyous day it really was.
Great, thank you, Mr. Musson. And I think if Ian's still there, I'm just going to move on. So thank you very much to the committee, the principals, my two colleagues that served this. I'm kind of excited that we're going to be able to pull at least this off. And I say at least because I'm a father of a graduate this year. It's been heartbreaking to talk to Khalid about this. Also, an uncle of a few graduates. So yeah, when the governor moves the goalposts on us, I get excited. And just off the record, I'm not giving up yet. But this is, I think this is a great work. This is a great plan. But hopefully we can do better. If not, this is a very good plan. And like Mr. Musson said, yeah, and I know both principals mentioned, this is not like we're settling. We still want to celebrate you. We're very proud of you. We're happy to serve you and your educational needs. But with all that being said, if there's no other comments by any of my colleagues, at this point, the chair will entertain a motion to kind of give the thumbs up for this plan for now. I'm sorry if I keep saying for now, but I don't want to put any pressure on anybody, but I will entertain a motion to move forward with the personalized graduation ceremonies.
So moved.
Support.
So we do have a motion that was moved by Dr. Mead, supported by Trustee Moseb. Are there any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Do you want to restate the motion so that everyone is
You know
clear?
what, I'm
Or
just
just
keeping it
that?
simple, keeping it
Okay.
simple, that us as a Board of Education, Dearborn Board of Education, we're giving the thumbs up for the personalized graduation ceremonies, just
Okay.
recognizing the work of the committee. If any of my colleagues want anything else, add anything else to the motion, amend the motion?
Are we attaching the tentative dates for the graduation for each high school?
Yeah, personalized. I mean, we're going to leave it up to the principals. If this is the final date, I know Principal Casebolt is going to be looking at the weather for that week. He might. Are these dates set in stone now, or?
I think the community would like to know some specific dates at this point.
Okay, then I'll amend the motion I was entertaining then to say the personalized graduation ceremonies, July 13th, 14th, 15th, and 16th. And we'll post it on the website. What date is what? I don't have that great of a memory. So what school? So fair enough.
Perfect.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Lane, yes. McDonald?
Yes.
Mead?
Yes.
Mosa?
Yes.
Petchlokoff?
Yes.
Thorpe?
Yes.
Barry?
Yes. So the motion passes. Thank you very much. Please attach a unanimous roll call vote to the motion, to the principals, and I'm hoping, I know that's probably that is Hiam's phone number. So thank you very much for all your work into this. I know what you've been going through. So logistics. So we appreciate you, appreciate your staff, appreciate the committee. That's all the work that's been done into this. Okay, so next item, please.
Policy updates, policy 3121 and 4121, criminal history record check by Dr. Glenn Maleko, Ms. Maysam Alibazi.
And David, do you want to, this is something that went to the board. I don't know if we're going to have Maysam in here. David, do you want to comment on this?
Yeah, we had our new safety and security supervisor, Mr. John Leacher. Mason asked him to review policies related to, safety, security, criminal record, history check, what have you. He had found a few that just were out of date, and they just needed some, more or less not changing the meaning or intent of the policy, just simply changing some language in the policy to bring it up to date. And we brought this to the board policy committee last month. Committee seemed to be in agreement with these simple changes in the text. So we're bringing them here tonight for the board to see. And I think you can see in the information that was provided to the board that, like I said, these were just more or less housekeeping changes, not changing the intent of the policy.
Okay, any comments, any questions? Dr. Maleko, is that it on that item?
We're fine. If there's no questions, we'll just proceed for next month with on the agenda for approval. We had John, I know we also had Mr. Leacher available if needed. So thank you, President Barry.
Okay, great.
And
thank
Dave.
you. Next item, please.
Well, the next item will be a lot more exciting. 2019-2020 second budget revision in 2020-2021 budget report 19-139. Dr. Glenn Maleko and Mr. Tom Wall.
So we have Tom in here, and I'm turning it over to Mr. Wall, who has been, doing a great job leading us through this budget crisis with the board. And we've had I can tell you our executive cabinet has spent hours on hours meeting on budget, hours and hours and hours. And we talked about it in the finance committee. So we appreciate the work of the finance committee. And, we have a plan to get through this crisis, and led by Mr. Wall and our entire team. And so I'm going to turn it over to him.
Good evening, President Barry, Dr. Maleko, and members of the board. Can you hear me okay? All right. Just want to make sure, because I don't want to start talking and listening. This is a long process. We started this process back in February to kind of get us to where we are today. A lot of meetings, a lot of presentations. I don't think I've ever actually done live presentations on social media like I have done in the last month and a half. So that was kind of new, but it's good because all this stuff is out there for people to look at. And according to David and Glenn, that there's a lot of people watching it, which means there's an interest there. So it's good that we can share this stuff and be very transparent. The actual budget that we are aware of is all based on information we have gathered through state meetings, through meetings with our legislators, meetings with staff. This is one of those years where we don't have any concrete direction of where the state is going on the budget. They usually would do after the May revenue consensus, they would actually give us, some tentative plans of where they're headed. And eventually they would come to some agreement sometime in June, and we would actually have some concrete information. Unfortunately, right now, there is nothing in place, so we're kind of estimating across the entire board, which means that what we are going to eventually adopt before July 1st at our June 22nd meeting is all based on estimates. And we will have to actually amend it and change it as we go forward, as we actually get more information for where we're actually going to get funded. So with that, I'm going to take over the screens momentarily and show the presentation. I'm not going to go in as depth as as we do in the finance committee meetings, because obviously we don't have that amount of time, but it's just kind of giving an overall global look at what our general fund is going to look like for the end of this year, the outside parameters that we're trying to work within to develop a budget for next year. All right, just give me a second as it's loading. Okay, can someone verbally say they can see this? I just want to make sure people can see it.
Yes. They can see it.
All right, just want to make sure. And there might be a delay for what I'm talking about, because I know that since this is also live, there's a slight delay on what the public might see. So just be aware of that. So just kind of listen along, but also pay attention to the slides. It might be a little bit later. So again, just providing our mission statement that we have for Dearborn Public Schools. It's always important to remember why we're here. So just the Dearborn mission statement there. And just our district by the numbers. Most of these have updated. I wasn't able to update the student free percentage on the ELL language learners and special ed. That was numbers from last year. With us being shut down here, that some of that information was available, but all the numbers should be pretty much close to where we're operating at for this fiscal year. And again, I always like to share this slide. This actually gives you a visual of where our money is at. By state law, we're required to have all these different categories for budgets. So in there, you'll see on the very far left on the top, we have our general fund, which is made up of our general fund, athletic fund, and our enhancement millage. And you'll see a new one there called fiduciary funds. There is a new GASB pronouncement where we had to take some of our student activity funds and actually treat them more like general funds because of a recent GASB pronouncement. And we were down that path. And then, of course, with this closure that we had, they kind of step back and say, well, we're going to delay that implementation till next year. So there's not going to be much in that, but it was something that we were talking about, so I didn't want to lose track of it. And now further clarification has come out that it might not be in the general fund. It might actually be in the special revenue funds, which is the next box over. So you can see in the special revenue funds, we have our funded projects. So that's where we have a lot of grants like Title I, Title II, IDA for special ed, things like that. Our food service fund is in there, our adult and community ed, and our Special Education Act 18 fund that is levied by the local ISD, and it comes back to us for moderate to high level special ed children. So just kind of give you an idea of that. Next one over is debt funds. So you can see our outstanding debt funds. This has been and the one next with capital projects has been a lot of discussion lately. It all kind of pertains back to our infrastructure program that we had a lot of conversation with the last couple of years, that we were unsuccessful on a bond attempt back in November. And with this recent shutdown, a lot of that conversation has been pushed off as we kind of figure out where we're going to be for next year for the starting of school. But that's also the other two funds. So that makes up the entire budget for the district. And feel free to ask me questions as we go along. So what are the significant changes for the 2019-20 fiscal year? Well, the largest one is the state aid per pupil. We are expecting to get reduced by the state of Michigan for the shortfall, and I'll have some slides showing you where that's coming from. But we're looking at an estimated $650 for the most likely scenario. And we're at the point now, even though we have our ranges of our worst case, best case, and most likely, for budget adoption, we always work towards the most likely scenario. So we have to have a budget by July 1st, even though the state's fiscal year is October through September. So we have two different fiscal years working here. So things that the state might have to deal with, for example, the shortfall in the current year funding, they have to do that by September 30th. However, our fiscal year, as ends June 30th, we have to make decisions based on that cycle. So there's always going to be that little conflict of when things get resolved that could potentially have something that affect this current year that might actually happen in the state's current year, but might happen after our school year. So just be aware there's a timing difference there that we always have to be aware of. That after all the discussions with our local state organizations, from what we hear from the House and Senate fiscal agencies, along with the governor, that most likely that's going to have to hit the 2019-20 school year, because the state's going to have to respond to a shortfall in the current year. And if they don't respond to the shortfall in the current year, then it has to hit a proration. So we're actually, as a part of this budget adoption, looking at that $650 affecting the 2019-20 school year, the current year we are in, which means that our revenue payments will be reduced. So we're not going to have to actually write a check back to them, because I would hate to write a check for that size of a dollar value. But what our state revenue comes in from the state from October through August. So even after we're closed and finish the school year on June 30th, we still receive money from the state in July and August because of their fiscal year that pertains back to our fiscal year. So they'll most likely take money out of those payments there to kind of impact us, which if we didn't have a higher fund balance like we do right now, it's going to cause potentially cash shortages for a lot of school districts that might not have the reserves in their fund balance to be able to handle this cash flows. So there'll be a lot of scrambling if that does happen that quickly in July or August. All right, so what does that actually mean? So this slide here is a pie chart showing for the school aid fund, which makes up 54% of the entire state's budget, is money that goes to the school aid fund. And the two largest components is one on the right-hand side, which says sales tax. That makes up 46% of our budget that comes to schools from the state. The other one on the left side is income tax, which is 21%. So 67% of our money comes from the economy, either through the purchasing of, supplies, groceries, things like that, or from the income tax, which is our annual return that is due on April 15th of every year. With this recent closure, that April 15th date got pushed out to July 30th, which means that number won't be known until much later. And with that issue, you can see with a large component coming from that, a lot of the legislators are waiting to kind of see how that turns out and how that will impact the funding that's available. So this is unusual that they're actually going to have another revenue consensus in August to actually look at those numbers, the final numbers, and I think that's when we'll actually see some movement on what will happen for our school aid fund for sure. But at this point, we're just doing our best guess of where that money is going to hit and when it's going to hit. And I just want to kind of give you the pie chart. So from the May revenue consensus meeting, this kind of shows you our baseline sales tax. So you can see in early 2020, all of them are below the line. So with the economy being closed, that means that the sales tax that normally would have happened was significantly reduced, which actually brings in less revenue from the state. So it's going to create a shortfall from their projections on their base sales tax growth. The next graph is showing income tax. So from the May revenue consensus, they're estimating that people that were not working during the closure, they're obviously going to pay less state tax because it's a flat tax. And so therefore that percentage that goes to the school aid fund is going to be much lower. So you can also see that those are going down. But let me go back one slide again. But on the baseline sales tax, if you look in 21 and 22, it does seem to have goes back up and it'll eventually kind of recover. Now what will happen is that normally that 2020 would have been above the line. So it looks like we're going to basically recover in 2022 from what we lost in 20, but obviously it hasn't grown, on upon each other through 2022. So we're actually going to overall have less money in the school aid fund, but it looks like the economy is going to spring back as what they're projecting by 2022. And same thing with the income tax growth. You can see where there's a reduction in 2020, but the significant increases in the following years to kind of recapture that. Similar situation as the sales tax. So the school aid net fund, this is just combining of all the items. As you can see, a very similar approach because the two of the largest items are expected to be in the negatives for what they projected from 2020. So this is our school fund revenue. Not a pretty picture, but as you can see, it kind of goes back to where we looked at in 2009-10. You can see at that point, that's where we had that recession. And if you remember back then, we had a reduction of $470 in our pre-pupil allowance. In addition, the district in Dearborn also lost money in the 20J because we're a hold harmless district and our at-risk funds. So you can see that we got hit very hard here in Dearborn back in that time. As you can see, just by the length of the graph, that something very similar is going to happen this year. That's going to happen in 2020 that the state's going to have to address. So this last screen just kind of shows you back in January, we were actually looking at not want to say necessarily an easy budget process, but one less stressful than what we're living with right now, because the actual expectations back then was very positive. We were actually looking at larger state aid growth than we've seen for a long time. And then actually now, though, if you look on the bottom half, that you can see that the school aid fund, we're talking over $1 billion loss from what we expected back in January. So hence, that's where all these issues are coming about of where our revenue shortfalls are because of our recent pandemic where the economy was closed, that a lot of the revenue that goes to the school aid fund is going to be much, much lower than what originally was thought back in January. So that's what's creating our revenue shortfall that's going to impact us. So with any revenue shortfall, this little introduction that comes from the state budget office that says section 296 of the School Aid Act, that if there is a shortfall, there's a time frame that happens where the state budget director notifies the legislator, well, actually the treasury notices the state budget director, then the state budget director notifies the legislative, and they have so many days to react to it. If they don't react to it, then there's an automatic proration by law to balance the budget. And that's an even proration across all districts. So that would the same amount would be for all districts. So that's what we're dealing with here. And that's why with the shortfall, and I'm not sure if the legislators will act on it, that we will probably most likely see a reduction in our state aid in our current year, 2019-20. So I went through that pretty good or pretty fast. So just let me just speak up if you have any questions. So when we're looking at the school budget, there are certain areas that we look at. The three main areas for our revenue is our taxable values. They're actually increasing 4.7%. Now, this current year will not be impacted as much because a lot of the tax value assessments are done and into the state process well before the actual shutdown of the state. So any adjustment in the taxable values we'll see next year, unless there's appeals and all that, but we'll see more next year than we would see in our current year. The foundation allowance, we're looking for 2019 to be prorated down by that $650, and that's looking at using that proration language that will affect the 19-20 school year. And with them not having the money, then most likely 2021 will be expecting zero. And then hopefully from there, some of our long-term projections, we'll start getting some of that money back. And there is a slide I'll show later of kind of what one of the scenarios we're looking at. So, and the last one is student count. So our student count, obviously we get our foundation allowance per student. So that's a big one for us. And it's actually slightly increasing, about 151 students is what we're estimating for next school year. So those are the big three on the revenue. On the staffing side, the contracts, as we stated earlier, were all settled. And this is the third year of the contract, which is entitled to a 2% across the board increase. And we also have a younger workforce. As we have retirements, our workforce is starting to get a little younger, which means steps become more of a factor as we go forward, and they're more like a cost of living adjustment that's built into the contract. So those are the costs we also have to account for. And we kind of hope that the retirements we have annually will kind of offset the increase in steps, but we're finding that that range is actually growing of what we have to cover in additional money to the retirements. And when I say retirements, we're always sad to lose our experienced teachers. But on our scales, an experienced teacher has a much higher cost for the budget than a beginning teacher. And that cost differential is what we use as we call savings in the cost of the two contracts. And we use that cost, those savings to kind of help offset the cost of living adjustments. The instructional programs, we are recommending to still remain strong. And, I know the instructional team appreciates you approving the two contracts for the English language arts for the elementary and the high school math. Those are part of two big components that's going into the instructional program. And the infrastructure we're maintaining, but we're losing available funds in the general fund. Normally the general fund does contribute some money to the infrastructures going forward, but as part of our cost saving measures that we're gonna have to reduce that on a minimum for now until we get through this program and wait for the economy to catch up again and be able to maintain our revenue stream going forward. So those are the kind of the overall changes. So as part of our budget hearing, we have to go over what our tax rates will be. And there is a big change, what we've seen in last several years. One of the things you'll see different this year, and this was just on a request from the Wayne County, typically you would see one for both the city of Dearborn and the city of Dearborn Heights. Well, this year, actually last year, Wayne County asked us if we could do two separate ones. Actually, three separate ones. They want us to do one just for the college, one for the schools, and then also one for the city of Dearborn Heights, city of Dearborn. So it was getting kind of confusing, but again, as we stated earlier, we're one entity. So we are keeping one form that we show the activity for both the K-12 program and the post-secondary program for Henry Ford College. So the top four lines are for the school district. The very first two, sections A, are for our operation millage. We have a non-homestead tax that is, or property tax on non-homestead property, which are businesses, apartment complexes, industrial, commercial type entities. And then you have your homestead property, which is on the homestead portion. And it gets calculated differently on the tax bill, but that's the general how it works. But on the voted side, the debt side, previously at section B, we were at 4.82 mils. This year, going into next year for the 2020 levy, we're actually going to be down to 3.5. And we expect that 3.5 to kind of be very similar next year. And then after that, we'll see another potential dip in the millage for debt payments as the 2002 bonds come off the books. So you do see that the 2.28 and the 1.22 is equal to 3.5, where previously that was 4.82. The college mills are the same as they were last year, so not much has changed on that side. Also, there's no Headley effect. So when actually property taxes goes through a formula that when you look at the additions and subtractions and the property values, if that increase is greater than inflation, we have what we call the Headley rollback, which actually makes our debt or our millages roll back a little bit to make sure it stays with our state constitutional limits. And that is not happening. So you can see it's all 1.0, which means there's no impact for that for next year. All right. And then just again, 4.7% is what our tax base increase from last year to this year on all property. It does get broken down differently by category, but just overall, it's a 4.7% increase. Now, normally that would be really good news for us for our debt side, but on our operational side, it does not impact us as much because our revenue from the state comes in based on our per pupil allowance. So our foundation allowance is very important for us. But let's say we raise $100 for our number of students times our state aid. I'm just obviously just using a smaller number. If we had $20 come in for property taxes, the state only gives us $80. So if our $100 per pupil allowance number of students is correct, and we bring in $30, then the state only gives us $70. For operational purposes, our tax increases doesn't really impact our revenue. So it does help us on the debt side and for the enhancement millage, but that's not necessarily going to impact us on the operational side. So as you can see, one of our big three factors is the foundation allowance. And this gives you a graph of the history of the foundation allowance from the beginning of Proposal A. Again, you can see in the 2010 area where we had that recession and we lost $470. And as we were projecting for the 2019-20 year, that we're going to lose the $650 from the proration, that our revenue stream is going to be lower than 2003 levels. So even though a lot of our costs have increased since 2003, that those impacts, our revenue stream is now back down to that lower level. So hence why there's a budget impact that we're trying to deal with as we look forward for the end of this year and for next school year. I'm going fast, so let me know if you have questions. So looking at our student counts, and so as you can see last year, the current year 1920, we are on the far right-hand side, a total of 20,634 students for FTE purposes. And for accounting purposes, we use FTEs, not head count. For actual staffing, we do use head count for actual staffing of classes, but for financial reasons of tracking all the kids, and when the kids are part year, partial program. So that's why they have to do an FTE for state purposes. Then next year, we are looking at an FTE of 20,785 students. And so just kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at, that we are looking at a slight increase. And you can see on the bottom that our foundation allowance actually comes up to 170 million. Our property tax is at 31 million on the bottom right. And so our state aid will be 138 million. Now, again, if that property tax was higher and say 140 million, then our state aid would be 130 million. So that just kind of goes into our formula when we figure out how much state aid we're going to get. And with state aid being roughly 80% of our budget, it's a big component when we look at to see how we're going to be funded for next year. Can someone just give me an okay that I'm still being heard and still live?
You're good.
Okay. I just want to been talking so fast, I haven't heard any comments. So looking at our most likely scenario next year, you can see the history of our fund balance, and you can see a large jump in 2016 to 17. The enhancement millage, because we were actually borrowing back then, that we used our enhancement millage to boost up our fund balance and cash flow reserves. So we would collect it in the first year and spend it the second year. As the second year's millage came in, we would spend it the third year. So that basically gave us a year's worth of revenue in our fund balance to use for cash reserves, and we got out of the borrowing process. So that's worked very well for us, and it's given us a cash reserve to be able to make sure that we can help offset the program if there ever at some time was a deficit that we had to deal with. Now, if you'll see the big change from if you watched the finance committee meetings, that in 2019-20, you can see where our original budget was 67,000 back when we did our first amendment. Now you can see that that number previously was about $1 million we thought we're going to save, but that number has grown tremendously because we've moved the 650 reduction, which will show up later as zero, moved it up into the 19-20 school year. So that's why you actually see a large reduction at that point. Now we are going to actually get some cash savings from some of the programs and services we've offered that weren't continued for the last 2.5 months. So that'll actually show up in the savings of the 19-20 school year. So we're looking at our fund balance to drop to roughly about 21 million for next school year, going into next school year because of that proration. Now, we don't actually know when that's going to happen, but we're budgeting in the 19-20 school year. For looking forward, you can see that obviously if we ran the same program we did last year, that 67,000 in surplus would still be there. So that's a savings we can use for next year. We're looking at the 151 student increase, which will give us another $1.2 million in new money. The enhancement millage, as I stated earlier, we collected this year and we'll spend it next year. So you can see where it comes in this year, and further down you can see where it actually goes back out in the same amount. So that just means the money comes in and goes into for next year's program planning purposes. Our health insurance is increasing 2%. That's a state number that we shared, and we have bargained that into the contract that we will pay that portion. Our salary increases are increasing 3.2 million. And this is where I say our step increases are increasing 5.8 million, but our retirements is only 2.7. And that's where I stated earlier that we're seeing that number rise and our actual retirements are not covering that full amount. So that's additional amount we have to cover into the budget program. Previously in our finance committee meetings, that foundation increase was negative 650. Now it's actually going to be zero because we moved that 650 up into the prior year. And the last part is the budget matrix, which shows where we're actually reducing staff and other programs and transfers to kind of generate those savings to bring down to the operating deficit of roughly about $11 million for next, or actually $11 million surplus for next year. And that surplus will help offset the operating loss that we're having for the current year 1920, because that's where the 650 was at. So you're seeing where the reductions we're making is kind of offsetting that number, which will bring our fund balance back up from 9.12 at the end of this fiscal year down to, or up to 13.8% for next school year. And that number is, right where, we're about 11 to 13 is where we need to be, to where our cash reserves that we have are available is enough to make sure we operate the program and not worry about cash flow shortages during the school year.
Mr. Wall?
Yes, thank you for asking that question. I could use a break.
Okay, then I'll talk slowly so you can take a drink.
Okay.
All right, so in the environment where people love to find a headline, they could look at this and say that we're going to have a deficit this year of over $12 million. They could also look at this and say, next year, we're expecting a surplus of over $11 million. But it's all based on accounting. We did nothing wrong this year. It's that we're taking a hit due to the tax reductions due to COVID. And we didn't do anything miraculous next year. It's because all these other numbers are coming back up as the economy starts to recover. Is that a good way to kind of encapsulate it?
No, we are modifying our program to operate at a lower expense level. So we are looking at reducing staff and programs. We're setting aside one-time money to kind of help offset our shortage. And we're also looking at less money set aside for infrastructure. So those are the kind of things we're looking at. And the infrastructure, what I mean is the general fund usually transfers money to our building and site fund for our large projects. That could be a classroom addition, replacing roofs, new parking lots, new buses. So those kind of things we're going to say for a short-term gap, we're going to have to take that money and use it for the daily instructional program, so we don't have to go as far cuts in staffing or other program or expenditures. And so districts saying, well, why do you always look at staff? Well, schools are a service industry, and roughly about 85 to 86% of our total expenses are for staff. So the other 15% is all the services we do, substitutes, supplies, contracted services, utilities. That other 15% is the rest of our budget. So to impact it to any great degree, you're going to have to look at staffing levels or our compensation levels to kind of look at to get the budget back in line when you have something like a significant reduction like we're dealing with of the $650 from our state aid. So we have to look at that level, because that's the only place we really can make a big enough impact to kind of get our operating budget back in line.
But again, when we're looking at this year that we're getting ready to conclude, if somebody just looked at the number and saw that we had a deficit this year of 12 million, they might think that we weren't paying attention, we weren't being good stewards of the money. That's not the case. It's because the state is going to tell us that we're going to get a $650, and this is an estimate, $650 reduction per pupil. So they're taking away roughly $13 million from us.
Correct. And, and we debated this a lot, at least from the financial side, is do you want to have a budget you adopt and have you become way below that because they took the revenue away, so you have a big shortfall in your budget? Or do you adopt a budget that has the shortfall already in it, and the state decides to do something that your revenue is much higher than your budget? When you look at, when we deal with rating agencies and dealing with, borrowing, and when we do our financial statements, when people read it, they like to see that you actually have more money than what you expected versus having a much higher budget and come in much lower than that. They'll say, well, why didn't you plan for that shortfall? Where they're otherwise, they'll say, well, it's much easier to plan for an over budget. We have more revenue than what you budgeted. So there's a lot of thinking that we went into this. And most of the business managers that we talk to, especially in Wayne County, are doing it this way just for appearance sake. That looks like we are trying to plan for this, but obviously everybody knows it's a best guess. But it looks better that if you come over our revenue than actually under. If that makes any sense too. All right, so hearing no other questions, I'm gonna keep moving here. So again, as our foundation allowance is important, so is our student count. So this is just a visual showing our student count since 2000. And I give a lot of credit to Dave. He's the one that helped me with this, and he's been tracking this for years. It kind of shows you that our trend, as you know, every trend is going to have their ups and downs a little bit, but on the trend, we have been moving forward and higher through the years, which is always a good thing to see. This shows that Dearborn has been doing well, has been growing its program. But you know, one of the shortfalls that we have seen that we've been dealing with the last several years, our last new building has been in the year 2004, the last time we built a new building. And that actually came up with some of the concepts. So once we get going forward, you'll see that one of our tasks going forward is again to kind of look at the infrastructure program and see how that matches our student population and the services that we offer. But this is just a good overall graph showing you our trend for our student population. So you're not really meant to read these screens. They're more for just visual purposes, that as we go through this, we do 3 scenarios, and we've been doing this for the last 5 years of looking at a worst case, best case, and a most likely throughout this process. And as we get closer to the June, we adopt our most likely case. Usually you don't have that large of a variance because a lot of the things are known, but with this current situation we're in, that our difference between our worst case and best case is all just under $9 million, which is a lot of money. So when you're trying to plan, it's very difficult to look at the depth of where this change is, that you can't always figure out what the best case is, what the worst case is, but just having that breadth makes it very hard to adopt a budget that's very meaningful for people. So I know there's been a lot of discussion today on staffing and programs. When we deal with a budget in this current scenario, we cannot be as exact as we can to our staff, our principals, to kind of help generate how that impacts them. So we have to kind of look at it and say, this is our movement forward, but a lot of things are going to change over the summer. So not everything's set in stone. And when you don't have all the information that we have that we need to develop a sound budget, you have to be very flexible as we go forward. So for example, we always put money aside for staffing changes, what we call a teacher reserve, because not every student is going to come in and even numbers that every time a student moves in, it's 30 at a time or 20 at a time, and it's going to go to first grade at one of our elementaries. It doesn't work that way. They're all over the place. So we have to have a reserve set aside, which we do in the budget, to kind of help that. So as principals work their schedules and their class assignments, it never is as simple as a budget may per se. So you have to have that flexibility to be able to adjust. So I know the issue about we give our preliminary numbers to the principals and they're starting to do their master schedules. If they have problems, they know they can come back to us, work through the issues. We have to make sure we're somewhat consistent across the district in how we apply the cases of where additional staff might be added. So those are the things that we go through all summer long. And I give Miss Ali Bazy all the credit because she has a hard thing to do over the summer. But a lot of people are kind of recuperating for the school year. HR is in the trenches working hard to figure out staffing levels. Who's going to go where? How's this all going to work? Because our philosophy has been that we don't really want anybody to lose a job. Now, you might not be able to do the same job you did last year, but we're trying to make sure that everybody's still employed and is in a position they can, to teach kids as the best that they can. So that's what we're kind of working on a philosophical level. Now, obviously, as you work through the reality, there are going to be changes. So don't be surprised if we have to add teachers here or do something different here. That's normal, the process that we go through over the summer. And again, as Dr. Malenko said, we're kids first. So we're going to defer to decide what's best for kids. So we'll work through that process and we'll get through those as we go through the summer.
We'll have to call for an extension on time.
Oh, sorry, I'm going too long.
Now, I was just getting ready to chime in myself, Roxanne.
Okay.
Still got a few minutes if you want to continue.
Okay, just let me know.
Yeah, a few minutes.
So this just kind of shows you up on the top side, you can see under the 3 different scenarios that we were looking for a reduction in, I'm gonna take my glasses off because they're small. Sorry, Roxanne, because I know you like them bigger. For the best case, a reduction of 54 positions, and these are across all unions. It isn't specific to any one particular union. Worst case was 85 positions, and most likely it was 65 positions. And those positions could be anywhere from any of the unions as we went through the process. The big changes on here, you'll see that there's a reduction in buses. Normally by 4 a year, we're going to be down to 2. And for column E or line EE, that's where we're actually reducing the transfer for capital projects. And the other red highlighted section is just we get additional revenue based for MIPSers to kind of help offset that. So that's something we see every year as our salaries enclose. The legislator is getting us some off money to offset our MIPSers, which is our retirement program increases. One of the things I'm always worried is at-risk funding. If you remember, we've lost that funding from 2010 to about 2017, 16, 17. We recently got that back at 1/3 the pupil cost, but I'm always worried that they're going to do something with that. So that's something we have to watch going forward. So
I got it.
Yep. Go ahead.
Can I real quick? I know all these assumptions are being made through the normal assumptions, even though we know the normal is different. But one thing that I'm not seeing included in any of this conversation is the kinds of adjustments we're going to be making depending on what kind of school year we're going to be looking at next year. If we have to have social distancing on buses, and we don't have enough buses to transport students because you could only have them half full. If we have to have PPE in all the buildings, if we have to have extra cleaning products, if we have to have staggered schedules, all those kinds of things. How, and that's not even debating what kind of money we might or might not be seeing from the state and federal government. How are we going to be able to create a budget with so many balls in the air, so to speak?
And it's going to be very difficult. Let me go back a couple screens. So, and that's why we don't know where that's going to go just yet. And we really have to wait to see where the state allows the parameters for us to work in. And there's obviously the committee that Dr. Malenko talked about earlier about looking for next year. That's where we're going to have to figure out how to go forward with that. So as part of
we have to have a budget by June 30th.
Right. And so some of the things we are working with is we have 2 things that I mentioned earlier, that the one-time money. We have the money in the enhancement fund that we potentially could use that to help offset if we had to buy a couple of buses. We have enhancement funds that might have been used for something else we can repurpose to that. We have the CARES Act that we are getting. We're getting roughly about $8.5 million from CARES Act through the federal government that passes through the state to us. We have to proration that out with the non-public schools. So we have roughly about 7.6 we have. We're looking at using half of that to help offset the operational program. That's where back in this screen, it's kind of part of that 16 million on the budget matrix. That's okay. What we're that large surplus for, because we're going to use some of that grant money to offset our operating purposes. But we have the other half to deal with COVID issues. And all the money has to be dealing with COVID issues, but we're looking at a new money to be used for different things. One of them that isn't part of our current program is the purchase of the curriculum that you approved today. Majority of that money is going to come out of the COVID, so it doesn't have to come out of our current operating budget. We're going to be looking at offsetting additional cleaning costs. That's going to come out of the CARES Act. So all kind of things we're looking at to do that. Now, obviously, we don't have all the answers because we don't know what that's going to look like. But that's why we couldn't use more of that CARES Act and say, why don't we just take the full 7.5 million that we're available for and put it in the general fund to offset costs. We can't do that because we have to offset potential new costs with that CARES Act.
Okay.
Done and said, and it says that, we are going to get additional federal money that we potentially could offset and actually replace some of the positions we're looking at, eliminating to from the retired staff or frozen positions that are unfilled at this point.
All right, let's take a break, Dr. Wall. We'll entertain a motion to extend the meeting 15 minutes.
So moved.
Support?
So we have a motion by trustee Moses, supported by trustee McDonald. We have a roll call vote, please, Madam Secretary.
Lane, yes. McDonald?
Yes.
Mead?
Yes.
Mosip?
Yeah.
Petchlokoff?
Yes.
Thorpe?
Yes.
Berry?
Yes, motion passes. Mr. Wall, please continue.
All right, I'll try to go a little faster.
No, you're doing fine, thank you. This is very important, and this is an excellent report. We're good.
Okay, so some of the changes you're seeing.
Do you have something?
I got the wrong dates on the top here. I just saw that. So actually it should say 1920 and 2021. So I apologize for that.
Okay.
We've done an attendance incentive in the past. For next year, we are not going to do that attendance incentive. Obviously, the staffing changes we talked about. The UAL adjustment is something that those numbers are always on the rise. We talked about more of that at the last finance committee. So we have to have adjustments for that. Some of the reduction extra pay assignments that, we didn't actually complete those for the entire year. So there's some savings there. We talked about the property tax valuations. And here's where we just talked about the CARES Act offsetting some of the portion we're putting. The rest is going to be used for COVID-19 issues. Legal settlement reserves, we had some adjustments there. Infrastructure we talked about. Transportation costs were reduced slightly because of our closure for 2.5 months. And so you can see some of the main items that were these things were changing for this current year and for next year. So this just kind of gives you a look at, on a picture-wise, where we're at with the February amendment, where we're going to end up on the June amendment. And I won't go through all the numbers, but this is kind of break down by category. See some of the adjustments and looking at next year. So these the numbers really, these are actually looking at the account level versus broad picture. So I spent a lot of time on this weekend to make sure I knew what the capture could have been in some of the categories for this current year to help in our budget. So I won't go through that much detail, but this one looks at going forward. And this one is important because what we're trying to do is that we know we're going to be struggling for at least 1 to 2 years as the economy comes back from where it was the shutdown. And so you can see that we're going to be suffering that for the next year. We're actually showing that we're going to have a deficit. The year after that, we're going to show a deficit. But after that, in 2022, 23, we're actually going to start coming back. But you have to remember, we're using one-time funds. So looking forward, that we have to be careful, like the 21-22 school year, that we have to be aware that we're going to have to make up for that money we set aside for the CARES fund. And then the 22-23, the money we're using for the enhancement fund for operations is going to be no longer there. Well, that's going to have to be brought back in to recover into the general fund. Now, just as a side note, there is the enhancement millage, I believe, is going to be on the November election for renewal. So depending on how that goes, that could also change a future scenario. But the yellow sections on the top area, you can see the 5.4 million. That's looking at the proration we're getting now of 650, that we'll start getting some of that money back in 21-22, which is roughly about 40% we're estimating. Another 40% the next year, another 20% the third year. So we're not really looking at any increases necessarily in our foundation allowance, but just getting it back over time. And again, this is all supposition, by our team trying to look going forward of what that's going to look like to kind of give us a model of that of when we start talking about long-term programs, how is that going to impact us in going forward? So I just want to briefly close on that so you know that there is a plan, long-term plan to look at this, that we're not just looking at year by year, but we are looking out to see how we do our program by using one-time funds, using our fund balance to kind of smooth our impact in the program so we're not having big drops any given year, hire people back, add programs, then drop it the next year. We want to make sure we have a smooth, consistent program, making sure we're trying to improve year after year. And just key issues going forward. Obviously, we got to see the finalization of the school aid, monitor and close out our current year. Big question, what is our fall instruction program going to look like next year? And we have to work through the staffing adjustments because once, this kind of gets through its process, we have to make sure it all works. And long term is just work very and look at our long-term plan for infrastructure / capital needs. And that's it. So I went through it quickly, and we mostly focused on the general fund and a few other funds. There's not a lot of changes in the other funds, so I didn't want to get too much into that. I thought this was more important to cover as we have our conversation.
Thank you very much. David, do we have anybody from the public to chime in?
There are a few comments. They're just restating what was said in the earlier comments pertaining to the music program at OL Smith. One comment is exactly the same. I guess they still have to be read into the record to be official.
Okay.
Okay, so the second comment does not have a name. As mentioned, it is something to the effect of what's a world without music? All Dearborn schools should have music. One person commented twice, so I'm skipping that second comment, which is the same as I read already.
Okay.
Megan Timpf of Allen Park commented thusly. Oops. As a current teacher at OL Smith and a former Dearborn Public Schools student of music, I was angered upon hearing that OL Smith's music program would be cut for next year. Our students lack elective options, with many students taking gym twice. These students should have the option of moving into our music programs rather than taking gym for multiple hours. In addition to this, studies have shown time and again that music helps with math, increases test scores, and promotes social emotional learning for students. I have seen anxiety-ridden students completely change their demeanor when they sing or hold an instrument in their hands. Students who previously felt they were outsiders and alone have found their place in music. As we go into next school year, the world is in a state of unrest. The pandemic and racial disputes have left many students struggling with their thoughts and emotions. During this time, they have been unable to see their friends, play sports, or go out of their homes. Many have turned to music as an outlet, and it is essential that the district continue to provide that outlet and allow students to explore it with the guidance of a caring educator and mentor. Cutting music is cutting an outlet for these students. It is reducing an essential social emotional support. Our students now more than ever need music. Reconsider this decision and demonstrate that students truly do come first. Next comment is from Student Council NJHS President Maya Brown, who says, and Maya is from Dearborn, representing the junior high school NJHS Student Council and the students. As an orchestra member for 4 years, I am more than disappointed to be informed of the decision to cut that program that makes so many students feel safe to be themselves. This program has shaped so many students into what they are today. These students have developed incredible skills that will last a lifetime. The music program has shaped students into smart, independent, strong, and caring people. This is not who we are as a community nor a district. This program is the most diverse program I ever seen in the district. During these racial injustices, we need to teach our students that it's okay to be different, and this program does exactly that. On behalf of the students, we are more than disappointed in the choice DPS has made, and we hope we can all come to our rightful senses. Ms. Waynick of Dearborn. There are so many kids excited for the sports games, including me. I was so happy they could play sports again after my injury last summer. And now I hear that there are so many people that are excited for our sports and electives this year. Please do not cut anything. Mrs. Harrison is commenting again. She's from Dearborn, representing OL Smith Band, saying this time, in addition to my earlier comment, which I apologize for if read twice, I would like to address the superintendent's comments on the enrollment of the OL Smith program. By not having a program by even 1 year, that is a detriment to the high school programs, especially at Edsel Ford High School, where a majority of these students will attend. They will be set back by a year, will not be able to perform like students in other districts, will not be able to participate in activities like Michigan Band and Orchestra Association Band and Orchestra Festivals, or solo and ensemble festivals. The number of students at Edsel Ford's band program will decrease because of the lack of interest in the program, because students and families will think Dearborn schools do not value this program. These programs have already been cut as I started in 4th grade with band twice a week in this district, and now students start in 5th grade with it once a week. Okay, so it looks like that is the extent, unless David Mustonen jumps in and corrects me. I think that's all of the comments that I see.
Excellent job, Trustee Lane. I don't see any more
Thank
at this
you.
end either.
Those were supposed to be budget comments, but they're obviously not on budget.
Yeah, there could
May
be
I proceed?
discussion for the budget.
Well,
yeah.
yes, they are related.
Yeah, so they are related. Do we have any questions for Mr. Wall before we proceed? My colleagues? Anybody? Okay, Mr. Wall, thank you very much for that exceptional report. Yes, have a good evening.
You too. Thank you.
Yes, next item, Madam Secretary.
Board of Education business, acknowledgement of correspondence.
Anybody? I received an email which I forwarded Dr. Maleko, and he forwarded it to the rest of the board. It's an email questioning, some of our expenses and travel expenses for the board. So, but everybody got a copy of it. So, if there aren't any more, can we have next item, please?
Board member committee and organization reports.
Real quick, as you know, we did meet on the 1st for a finance committee. Mr. Wallace covered that very well, and I thank him for his expertise. A couple other things that were discussed during that meeting was the Moody's Investment Services credit report, which was done for the district. The district received an A1 credit rating. Generally, districts get like a BBB credit rating. So kudos to the district for the outstanding credit rating. We also had Mr. Jeff Higgins with Plant Moran. It is that time of year again. We're going to be audited. He discussed the pre-audit. This is not an internal controls audit, but it focuses on high-risk areas. The process will start in the next week or so, and the final report will be coming late in August or early September. Mr. Higgins wanted me to pass forward to board members if they had any things in particular that they would like him to address or look at, to contact him and let him know. That's it.
At this point, let's go ahead and extend the meeting another 15 minutes. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Support.
Okay, Trustee McDonald motioned, and so the motion was supported by Trustee Moseb. Let's go ahead and have a roll call vote, please.
Lane, yes. McDonald,
yes.
Mead,
Yes.
Mosip,
Yes.
Petchlikoff,
Yes.
Orp,
Yes.
Barry.
Yes, thank you. Motion passes. Let's go ahead and continue. Are there any other committee reports?
Yeah, for the policy committee, we met last month, and as mentioned before, there were some policies that were just reviewed to be updated. Some on security, safety, as well as cyberbullying. The committee will be meeting this Thursday on the 11th, and it will also be virtual at 5.
5 or 5:30?
Thank you for the correction. I believe 5:30. Thank you.
Future meeting days 5:30, and I'm going to address the policy committee. If at all possible, I would like to see maybe a recommendation from that committee for the appointment process in case any vacated seats exist. I know it's been talked about for well over a year now, so, and I know that policy's been discussing it. So if at all possible, you can bring a recommendation to the full board by the next meeting.
I don't think we're at that point. Number one, our conversation, we threw out several different ideas of suggestions, and then we needed to make sure that they could be legally followed because they had some qualifications to it. So we wouldn't be ready yet to put forward something that was
maybe sometime, hopefully in the near future.
I will tell you this, President Barry, is my position was when we went to the virtual meetings, we had a conversation at our first virtual meeting, which was a college meeting, and we decided that all of the committee meetings should be held to their kind of bare bones of urgency instead of going into big long discussions, because these are very awkward ways to we didn't have available to us through the virtual meetings all of those bylaws and everything and all the things we had discussed at hand. So being prepared to have those kinds of conversations without all of the material available of past conversations made it difficult. So, and I know that at the college meeting, we discussed and said we would have only our committees meet for things that were of an urgent, timely nature. So, I don't want to rush something and get it wrong. And I'm not sure what you're concerned about. While I agree that the appointment one, if we can do something different, should be continue to be explored. But I don't see an urgency to it unless you know of somebody who's getting ready to vacate their seat anytime soon. That I just want to make sure we have all the facts and we don't proceed too quickly.
Yes, thank you for those comments. No, there's no reason to rush. And yes, of course, we want to be done, everything done legally. I was just looking forward for a recommendation because we have discussed this for a couple of years. That's all, nothing to rush. So I will wait to hear from the committee chair. Trustee Lane, you wanted something to add?
Oh, I just wanted to tag on to Trustee McDonald. She mentioned if any members of the board know of any reason, any area that auditors should look into. That is not just the board, that applies to the public as well. If anyone is aware of any fraud or any kind of malfeasance, they should let the auditors know. They don't have to go through the board. They don't have to go through the district.
Thank you for pointing that out. And this is where experience comes in. This is probably our most veteran board members. So that is a very important point that you make. So thank you for catching that.
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Is there anything else under committee meetings? If not, then we'll go on to the next item.
That is board member superintendent commentary.
I think we'll comment it out. Anything, Dr. Maleko?
Yeah, I just want to remind the public just that, when things come out or there's rumors and other things, come right to the board meeting, use our official district communication channels, because that's where you're going to get the most accurate information. We spend time in these meetings. You don't have to necessarily follow all the meetings, but you're welcome to. But if not, follow our official, websites, Twitter, Facebook accounts, and that's where you'll get all the up-to-date information related to COVID-19 or anything in the district. And the only other thing I would like to mention, if it's, I would like to congratulate, I'm going to take the opportunity, Shannon Peterson, who is the grandmother, her granddaughter, Elena, and Mr. Tim Courier is a grandfather. They both on the same day, within a day. So congratulations to her and her daughter, Katie Lynn, who's also a Dearborn Schools teacher. So since she's on my executive cabinet, I want to take that opportunity and just congratulate.
Thank you. Congratulations to both. I also want to go ahead and congratulate all of our students who are progressing and moving forward to the upper grade. And I'm looking forward to congratulating our seniors. My heart goes out to you, and we're going to have fun. I know that. We're going to have fun, and we're going to honor you and making sure that, Trustee Lane, you had something to comment?
I just want to be sure that we tip our hats metaphorically to our graduates. It was one of the greatest days of my life when my kids graduated. from high school and from college as well. But certainly their graduation is important. They'll be known by what they do. They'll not be known that they didn't have a graduation. They'll be known by sacrificing for other people. And their work to this point is the pride of their parents, their family. So I'm very happy for the graduates. As you said, I'm very, very grateful for all the students that stayed online, worked hard. I'm grateful to all the staff that went far beyond anyone could have imagined. Dr. Maleko, to our cabinet, to everybody at whatever level. It's been a very hard time for all of us. Some of us have adjusted better, some of us worse, but we all deserve a lot of appreciation from each other for this difficult year, but a successful one.
Trustee McDonald. Thank you, Trustee Lane. Trustee McDonald.
Quickly, I just also want to echo Trustee Lane's comments. Congratulations during this difficult time. Our students and everyone have really stepped up. And I also want to just quickly say that this entire board has many times touted the importance of music and arts and all of those things that go along. We understand what they mean to our children, and many students, that is the reason why they stay engaged in school, because that is what their passion is. So I just wanted to say that we never take any of that stuff lightly. We understand the importance, and we do support all of the arts. We know what it means, not just to our communication or to our community, but to society in general.
Thank you. Trustee Petchkoff.
Yeah, and I've got two things to say, but just to take on to Trustee McDonald about the arts. I also heard a concern, and I know over the many years of being on the board and being on the PTA for all of my kids' school years, that one school was being treated differently than the other schools. And there was a comment made about Bryant's getting this and we're losing that. And the feeling and sentiment that they're less than somehow. And I want to make sure they understand that we would never, ever, I mean, this was the very first, was the board meeting of my hearing about the conversation. It's unfortunate it was relayed to the parents in a manner that got them concerned before a final decision has been made on it, but I'm happy it was brought to our attention, but that they need to understand that we only want what's best and we want what's fair and equitable to every one of our students. And that being said, I want to remind everybody now that the official school year is ended, although it's been an odd one, and the parks still are not fully engageable yet, and the pools are closed, and summer months are here, and there seems to be so little for our students to do to entertain themselves, for everyone to just be safe, have patience with each other, find ways to enjoy your summer months and relax, and let your parents have a little breather as well, while still finding an opportunity to entertain yourselves and your family without getting yourselves into any kind of trouble that could cause harm to you or your other family members. So I just want everybody to remember that when they finally start their official summer vacation.
Thank you. Trustee Thorpe.
Congratulations to our graduates. Every year, we also deal with what is called summer learning loss, knowing that over the course of the summer, you're going to forget some of the things you learn. This year could be more severe than in past years due to the way education has had to be provided over the last 3 or 4 months. So parents, anything that we can do to help you, whether it's that you're going to be reading with kids or trying to find enrichment activities, perhaps maybe this starts to fall into a request for information, Dr. Maleko. Whatever resources we can put out there to try to minimize the summer learning loss, especially with what's going on in the current environment.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I think we're going to finish up before another extension. Trustee Moses?
quickly, I'd like to echo all of my colleagues' words. And this meeting would not go out with not saying anything about what's happening in our country. Unfortunately, the tragic events that has occurred from Minneapolis onwards. And I appreciate Dr. Maleko's statement on the social justice, as well as President Cavaluna at the college statement that he put out to recognize those peaceful protesters and their callings. And unfortunately, as we celebrate this country's diverse fabrics, unfortunately, it has a long history of systemic racism and violence, especially against the people of color. So for those protesting and for those who are asking for equality and equity, I tell them I stand with you, and I'm outraged by those events, tragic events. I'm also outraged to see a lot of very unfortunate events of looting and people taking advantage of these situations, which is very, very tragic. So I'd like to remind all of us to check ourselves for any bias, for any racism, and to always correct those who may unfortunately bring down others, or not even knowingly that they're being blatantly racist. So it's very unfortunate times, but I wanted to go on the record to make sure that we, at least for myself, I stand with peaceful demonstrators, and to those who are calling for social justice to come soon. I'd like to also remind everybody that the census is extending its deadline for it to fill out, but it's very crucial that we fill it out. If you haven't filled it out, it's an easy process that takes you 10 minutes. And I'm hearing from our representative and also the census directly that our numbers in Dearborn are actually down. And I was hearing about 50% completion, 60% completion, when they should be in the upper 80s. And it fluctuates in various parts of the city. So it's very easy to go online and fill out your census. If you need help, you can even contact the school district or some of the social organizations that we have in the city, as well as the city of Dearborn, to help you fill it out, or contact myself. I can guide you as well. One last thing that I'd like to mention is that Secretary Benson sent out the voter registration applications to vote by mail. Obviously, August 4th is coming soon, and that's the primaries in Michigan. And if you are planning to vote by mail, make sure that you fill out the absentee voter application. You would have to put in an application in order for you to get a ballot in the mail so you can fill it out. I'm still certain that there will be on-site voting, but it's to protect yourself and to protect your family. I would highly recommend that you will fill out the application to get an absentee ballot to vote for both the election on August 4th and election on November 3rd. Thank you, President Perry.
Yes, thank you. So we can stay legal here. Let's go ahead and extend the meeting. Contain a motion to extend the meeting another 15 minutes.
So moved.
So motion by
Support.
Trustee Moses, supported by Trustee Petrikov. Roll call vote, please.
Lane, yes. McDonald?
Yes.
Mead?
Yeah.
Moseb?
Yes.
Petchlikov?
Yes.
Thorpe?
Yes.
Barry?
Yes, the motion passes. Thank you. Are there any other comments? All right, next item, please.
Requests for information and or future agenda items.
Trustee Thorpe.
I mentioned to Dr. Malenko earlier today that I got some notices from parents wondering, at least for fifth graders that didn't have a chance to complete the health education segment of their education, if that is going to be rescheduled in June. I do believe that is mandated by the state. Sure.
Thank you. Anybody else? Dr. Malenko, I'd like to ask for something too. referring back to this email that we all got, I would like to see the travel expenses once we go out for national conferences or within the state conferences. If we can get the expense reports, travel expenses and meal stipends and what have you, hopefully for the last 6 years, starting January 1st, 2015 to currently. Thank you. Anybody else? Next item, please.
Future meeting dates, Thursday, June 11th, 2020, P12 policy meeting, 5:30 p.m. virtual meeting available for viewing live via YouTube Live, www.youtube.com, DPSCOMMDEPT. Facebook Live, www.facebook.com, Dearborn Public Schools. Next meeting, Monday, June 22nd. This is lacking the college meeting, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
It
So
is,
that's
sorry.
June 15th, HFC meeting, virtual, at 7 o'clock p.m. After that, Monday, June 22nd, 2020, P12 Board of Education meeting, 7 p.m. at the Administrative Service Center in the Frank Franchi Boardroom, following the guidelines of the Governor's Executive Order and virtually available live for viewing via YouTube Live, Facebook Live, and cable Comcast Dearborn Channel 19, WOW Channel 15.
Thank you. I'd just like to add for the Henry Ford College meeting, June 15th, there's more information on the website, so please refer to that for additional information. Hearing no other business, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Have a good evening.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.